The morning sun cast long shadows across the training grounds of Fort Knox. A line of M1A2 Abrams tanks stood in perfect formation, their desert tan hulls gleaming like ancient beasts awaiting the hunt. Colonel Jack Mercer stood tall atop the command hatch of the lead tank, the morning breeze ruffling his silver hair. At 58, his weathered face told the story of a man who had spent more time inside steel behemoths than most had spent in automobiles. 20 young tank commanders gathered before him, faces upturned, eyes hungry for knowledge that couldn't be found in manuals or simulations. These were the next generation of America's armored warriors. They had technology Mercer could only have dreamed of when he first climbed into an Abrams turret 35 years ago. Yet they lacked the one thing that no computer could provide: the visceral knowledge of what it meant to command 70 tons of American steel in the case of combat. Mercer swept his gaze across the group. The Abrams is not just a weapons platform. It's not just an engineering marvel. It's America's promise to her enemies. Wherever you hide, whatever you build, we will find you and we will destroy you. His voice carried across the training ground with the authority that came only from experience, the kind earned in the burning oil fields of Kuwait and the narrow streets of Fallujah. But a tank is only as good as the men inside it. The finest machine ever built is useless without a crew that thinks, moves, and fights as one. A young captain raised his hand. "Sir, with the new automated targeting systems, isn't the human element becoming less critical?" Mercer smiled. The question was asked in every class, in different words, but always the same underlying anxiety. Technology making men obsolete. "Captain, let me tell you about Medina Ridge, 1991. The crowd straightened. Mercer rarely spoke of his Gulf War experiences, and when he did, even senior officers fell silent. "My gunner picked up a T-72 through a sandstorm so thick we couldn't see 50 meters in any direction. The thermal imaging system was glitching from the heat. Our computers suggested the target was an abandoned vehicle, but Sergeant Martinez had spent hundreds of hours staring through that sight. He recognized the subtle heat signature of an idling engine that the computer missed." Mercer paused, his mind momentarily back in that sandstorm, the taste of grit between his teeth, the smell of diesel and fear. "We fired first. The Iraqi tank never knew we were there. 4 American lives saved because a human being trusted his instincts over a machine. Remember that when the tech boys tell you AI is the future of warfare." The young officers nodded, absorbing the lesson. Mercer was about to continue when he felt his secure phone vibrate against his chest. Few people had that number, and none would use it for trivial matters. "Continue the drill sequence. Lieutenant Colonel Barrett will take over." Mercer climbed down from the tank, his knees protesting the movement. Age was catching up with him, though he'd never admit it. He walked several paces away and answered the call. "Mercer." The voice of Major General Eleanor Walsh came through with crystal clarity. "Jack, we have a situation. How fast can you be in D.C.?" Walsh didn't make panic calls. As commander of the Armored Forces Development Command, she was as steady as the tanks she oversaw. If she needed him in Washington immediately, something was very wrong. "I can be wheels up in an hour. What's happened?" A pause. "Not over the phone, but it involves the M1A3 program. And Jack, it's bad." The line went dead, leaving Mercer staring at the phone. The M1A3 Super Abrams was the most advanced ground combat system ever developed, a quantum leap beyond even the upgraded A2s behind him. Most of its capabilities remained classified at the highest levels, and someone he trusted thought it was compromised. The military transport touched down at Andrews Air Force Base under darkening skies that matched Mercer's mood. A staff car waited on the tarmac, unusual protocol that underscored the urgency of the situation. The driver, a young specialist, opened the door without a word. "Pentagon or Fort Belvoir?" Mercer asked, naming the 2 most likely destinations for a high-level armor consultation. "Neither, sir. We're headed to a secure facility in Quantico." Interesting. The Marine base wasn't typically involved in Army tank programs. The drive passed in silence, Mercer watching the Virginia countryside slip by. His mind ran through scenarios, none of them good. The M1A3 represented billions in research and development, America's answer to advanced Russian designs like the T-14 Armata and China's expanding armored capabilities. The car finally turned into what looked like an ordinary office complex, distinguishable from corporate America only by the discreet security measures that Mercer's experienced eye quickly cataloged. 3 layers of perimeter defense, guards who moved like special forces operators. This was no ordinary facility. Inside, he was led directly to a conference room where Major General Eleanor Walsh waited. At 60, she remained imposing, her silver hair cut in the same no-nonsense style she'd worn since they'd served together in Desert Storm. Behind her stood three people Mercer didn't recognize, along with one he did, Michael Thompson. Michael stood at parade rest, his captain's bars gleaming under the fluorescent lights. At 35, he was the spitting image of his father, Robert Thompson, Mercer's gunner and best friend who hadn't made it home from Iraq. Mercer had kept his promise to look after Bobby's son, guiding him through West Point and into the armor branch. Now Michael was part of the M1A3 development team, specializing in advanced fire control systems. Walsh nodded at Mercer's arrival. "Jack, thank you for coming so quickly." "General?" Mercer kept his tone formal in front of the others. They'd been friends for decades, but this was clearly official business. "What's so urgent about the M1A3 that I needed to fly down immediately?" Walsh gestured to a secure tablet on the conference table. 4 hours ago, this appeared on 3 defense forums simultaneously. Mercer picked up the device. On screen was a technical document labeled M1A3 Super Abrams Systems Integration Overview. Below it spread page after page of specifications, schematics, and test data. His blood ran cold as he recognized details that should never have been viewable outside a skiff. "How bad is the compromise?" Walsh's face was grim. "The full tactical capabilities of the Trophy Active Protection System, the exact specifications of the new thermal imaging system, the actual combat weight with full loadout, turret rotation and stabilization parameters, and more." Mercer scrolled through the document, each page worse than the last. Who had access to this level of detail in one place? "That's why we brought you in. The list is very short. 15 people across 3 agencies, all with the highest security clearances." Walsh paused, including Michael. Mercer glanced at the younger man whose face remained expressionless. The implication was clear. "I didn't do this, sir," Michael said quietly, "but I understand why I'm here." One of the strangers stepped forward, a woman in her 40s with the bearing of someone used to giving orders. "Colonel Mercer, I'm Rachel Winters, Defense Counterintelligence. This leak represents a catastrophic breach of national security. Every advantage the M1A3 would have given us on the battlefield is now compromised." "Not necessarily," Mercer said, still studying the document. Something wasn't adding up. "Who found this leak?" "I did, sir." Michael stepped forward. "I run weekly searches for keywords related to our systems. This appeared on specialized forums frequented by military enthusiasts in foreign intelligence." Winters frowned. "The source appears to be someone inside Fort Knox, possibly using a compromised terminal in the main development facility. We're still tracing the digital footprint." Mercer continued scrolling, his tank commander's eye catching details others might miss. Then he stopped, focusing on a specification chart for the main gun. "This isn't right." "What do you mean?" Walsh moved to his side. "The muzzle velocity figures for the new tungsten penetrator rounds. They're listed at 1,750 meters per second. The actual velocity in testing was over 1,150. He looked up. "That's not a typo. That's a significant difference in battlefield performance." Winters looked skeptical. "You're certain?" "I observed the test firing at Aberdeen 3 months ago. The higher velocity was what allowed for the improved performance against reactive armor." Michael nodded in confirmation. "Colonel Mercer is right. These figures are wrong." Mercer kept scanning. "The trophy intercept radius is underreported by 15%. The thermal imaging effective range is off by nearly 200 meters. He set the tablet down. "This isn't just a leak. Someone deliberately altered key performance metrics." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Walsh was the first to speak. "Disinformation. Someone wants our adversaries to underestimate the M1A3's capabilities." "Or," said the third stranger, a hard-faced man in his 50s wearing a civilian suit that couldn't hide his military bearing, "someone inside the program is feeding false data to potential enemies. The question is whether that's sanctioned or not." "And you are?" Mercer asked. "Marcus Hendricks, Defense Security Service. Former tank commander, 1st Armored Division." The man's expression softened slightly. "Served under you in Iraq, sir. 2nd tour." Mercer nodded in recognition. Hendricks had been a solid NCO. "So we have a deliberate leak of what appears to be classified information, but with critical specifications altered to be misleading. That suggests an operation, not a simple breach." "The alterations are sophisticated," Michael added. "Someone with deep technical knowledge made specific changes that would only be apparent to those who've seen the actual test data. Walsh straightened. Jack, I need you to find out what's happening. Officially, you're here to conduct a security review of the M1A3 program prior to final congressional approval next month. Unofficially, I need to know if we have a counterintelligence operation I wasn't informed about, or if someone's playing a much more dangerous game. Mercer understood the delicacy of the situation. If this was an authorized deception operation, pushing too hard could compromise it. If it wasn't, they had a serious security breach potentially endangering American lives. I'll need full access and a small team I can trust. You have it. Michael will assist you, along with Lieutenant Colonel Winters and Mr. Hendricks. Mercer caught the slight narrowing of Winters' eyes. She didn't appreciate being placed under his authority, but she was professional enough not to object openly. One more thing, Walsh added. The M1A3 program goes before the Appropriations Committee in 3 weeks. If we don't have answers by then, there are those who will use this incident to argue for cutting the program entirely. The threat didn't need elaboration. Years of work and America's armored superiority for the next decade hung in the balance. Mercer nodded his understanding. We'll start immediately. Night had fallen by the time Mercer and Michael found themselves alone in a smaller conference room, surrounded by secure terminals and stacks of documentation. Winters and Hendricks were pursuing their own angles of investigation, leaving the 2 tank men to dig into the technical details of the leak. Mercer studied Michael's face in the harsh light of the computer screens. The young officer looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept since discovering the breach. You holding up okay, son? Michael rubbed his face. Been better, sir. Your dad would be proud of where you've gotten. Captain at 35, working on the most advanced tank in history. A ghost of a smile crossed Michael's face. I still remember him coming home from Desert Storm. The stories he told made me want to be a tanker from age 5. Mercer felt the familiar pang that always accompanied thoughts of Robert Thompson. They'd been inseparable since tank school, served in the same crew through Desert Storm. Then came that day in Baghdad in 2003, when an RPG found the gap between armor plates. Mercer had held his friend as he bled out inside the turret that had been their second home. He saved my life more than once. Best gunner I ever had. Mercer cleared his throat. But we've got work to do. Talk me through exactly how you found this leak. Michael turned to his computer and pulled up a series of screens. I run automated searches for specific technical terminology across military forums, defense industry sites, even the dark web. 4 hours ago, this document appeared simultaneously on 3 different platforms. Coordinated release, professional. Exactly. Too perfect to be some enthusiast who got lucky. The document uses current formatting and terminology. Whoever created it had access to the latest materials. Mercer studied the list of sites. These aren't mainstream platforms. Very specialized, almost like they were chosen to be found by the right people. Foreign intelligence monitoring points, Michael confirmed. Exactly where you'd post if you wanted certain foreign agencies to find information without broadcasting it publicly. Mercer considered this. If I wanted to feed false intel to adversaries, this would be the way to do it. Make them think they've stumbled onto leaked secrets. The question is who authorized it. This kind of deception operation would normally require approval at the highest levels. And Walsh would know about it, Mercer finished the thought, unless someone's running an off-the-books operation. Michael hesitated, then reached for his secure tablet. There's something else you should see, sir. He tapped several commands, bringing up a detailed schematic of the M1A3's fire control system. Look at the notation in the lower right corner. Mercer leaned forward, squinting at the tiny text almost hidden in the technical details. What he saw made his breath catch. Arrowhead 6-5, confirmed kill zone. To anyone else, it would appear to be standard technical jargon, but to Mercer, it was unmistakable. Arrowhead had been their unit call sign in Desert Storm. 6 was the commander, 5 the gunner, and confirmed kill zone had been their private acknowledgement of a successful engagement. It was a message only Mercer would recognize. How did you know to look for this? Mercer asked carefully, studying Michael's face. The younger man met his gaze steadily. Because I put it there, sir. In the heartland of America, while Mercer was discovering hidden messages in leaked documents, Dr. Elliot Warren stood in a cavernous hangar at the Army's classified testing facility in the Nevada desert. Before him loomed the future of armored warfare, at least in his expert opinion. The Prometheus tank prototype had no turret in the conventional sense. Its low-profile hull housed a remotely operated weapons station, guided by an artificial intelligence system that could identify, track, and engage targets faster than any human crew. No men sat inside its armored shell. The vehicle operated either autonomously or under remote control from operators safely positioned miles away. Warren, at 50, had spent his career pushing the boundaries of military autonomy. His thinning hair and perpetual stoop gave him the appearance of an academic, which he had been before joining the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Now, as director of the Prometheus program, he was on the verge of revolutionizing land warfare. Impressive, isn't it? The deep voice of Lieutenant General William Hargrove echoed in the hangar. At 62, Hargrove was the picture of a traditional military man with a chest full of ribbons and ramrod-straight posture. Yet he had become the Pentagon's most vocal advocate for autonomous weapons systems. How soon until we can demonstrate its capabilities to the Appropriations Committee? Warren adjusted his glasses. We've resolved the targeting anomalies from last month's test. The system is now identifying friend from foe with 99.7% accuracy, better than human operators. And the mobility issues? Fixed. The adaptive suspension now handles terrain obstacles as well as a manned vehicle. Better in many ways since it doesn't need to worry about crew comfort. Hargrove nodded in satisfaction. The timing couldn't be better. The M1A3 program is facing increased scrutiny after this security breach. When Congress sees what Prometheus can do, they'll understand that the age of the manned tank is over. What exactly was in that leak? Warren asked. My clearance should give me access. Technical specifications mostly, nothing that changes the fundamental equation. The M1A3 represents outdated thinking. A minor evolution when what we need is revolution. Hargrove gestured toward the sleek war machine before them. This is the future, Doctor. No crew to protect. No human limitations. Just pure, perfect lethality, controlled by the most advanced AI ever developed. Warren nodded, though privately he harbored concerns about Prometheus that he hadn't shared with Hargrove. The general saw only the potential benefits of removing humans from the battlefield. Warren understood the technical complexities and potential failure points all too intimately. The demonstration is scheduled for 3 weeks from now, correct? Coinciding with the M1A3 appropriations hearing? Exactly. One program represents the past, the other the future. I'm counting on Prometheus to make the choice obvious, even to those congressional dinosaurs. Warren forced a smile. We'll be ready, sir. As Hargrove departed, Warren turned back to the autonomous tank. Its sensor array seemed to watch him, judging him. Sometimes late at night, Warren wondered if they were moving too fast. The AI driving Prometheus had shown occasional behavioral anomalies during testing, minor glitches easily explained away. Nothing that would delay the program. But in his darker moments, Warren wondered if they truly understood what they were creating, and whether they could control it once it was unleashed. Dawn broke over Quantico as Mercer faced Michael across the now empty conference room. The admission still hung in the air between them. I put it there, sir. Explain. Mercer's voice was dangerously quiet. Michael straightened, meeting his mentor's gaze. The document is genuine, but I modified key specifications before uploading it to those sites. I needed to get your attention without alerting others. So you committed treason? Mercer fought to keep his voice level. This was Robert's son, the boy he'd sworn to protect, the man whose career he'd nurtured. No, sir, I executed a sanctioned counterintelligence operation, but something's wrong with the program, and I couldn't go through official channels. Mercer's eyes narrowed. Sanctioned by whom? General Walsh authorized a limited deception operation 6 months ago. Feed carefully modified technical data to foreign intelligence to mislead them about the M1A3's true capabilities. Nothing unusual. We've done it with every major weapons system since the Cold War. Then why the cloak and dagger? Why not just tell Walsh you execute her order? Michael hesitated. Because someone changed the parameters of my mission 2 months ago. New orders came through secure channels, authorizing release of much more detailed information than originally planned. Information that could actually harm our operational security, even with the modifications. Who issued these new orders? That's just it, sir. They came through proper channels, with all the right authorizations. But when I tried to verify directly with General Walsh, I was shut down. Told she was briefed, and I was to execute without further discussion. Mercer processed this. You think someone falsified orders from Walsh? Yes, sir. And when I started digging, I found something much bigger. Michael pulled up a new set of files on his tablet. The M1A3 isn't the only next-generation combat system in development. Have you heard of Project Prometheus? Mercer frowned. Vaguely, some automated tank concept, blue sky research. It's far more than that. It's a fully autonomous tank designed to operate without a crew. And it's much closer to deployment than anyone outside the program realizes. The revelation hit Mercer like a physical blow. He'd heard rumors of unmanned ground vehicles, but nothing that would replace the main battle tank. Lieutenant General Hargrove heads the program, Michael continued. He's been pushing for it to replace manned tanks entirely. The M1A3 stands in his way. You're suggesting Hargrove engineered this leak to sabotage the M1A3 program? That's a serious accusation against a 3-star. I don't know if it was Hargrove himself, but someone wants the M1A3 to fail its appropriations hearing. If that happens, Prometheus becomes the only viable next-generation option. Mercer considered the implications. If true, this went beyond inter-service rivalry or budget battles. This was about the future of American armored warfare itself. Why come to me? Why not take this to Walsh directly? Michael's expression darkened. Because I tried. My meeting with her was canceled 3 times. Then I was suddenly transferred to a different aspect of the program, away from the fire control systems I'd been developing. When I tried to press the issue, I was told to drop it or face reassignment. That doesn't sound like Walsh. Exactly. Someone's interfering with normal chains of command. I needed someone Walsh trusts implicitly, someone with enough experience and authority to get her attention. That's you, sir. Mercer paced the small room, mind racing. If Michael was right, they faced a sophisticated internal operation to undermine America's premier battle tank program. If he was wrong, or worse, if he was part of the leak for reasons Mercer couldn't yet see, then Mercer risked destroying his own career and their friendship by pursuing this. He stopped pacing and looked at Michael, searching for any sign of deception. Instead, he saw the same steady determination he'd seen in Robert's eyes so many years ago. Show me everything you have on Prometheus, and I mean everything. The morning briefing with Winters and Hendricks was tense. Mercer had decided to keep Michael's confession between them for now, while they gathered more information. Instead, he focused the team on investigating the broader context of the leak. We need to understand the why as much as the who, Mercer explained, standing before a secure digital board where they'd mapped the timeline of events. This leak appears precision-targeted to undermine the M1A3 program at a critical juncture. Winters leaned forward. Congressional appropriations hearings in 3 weeks. If the program appears compromised, or if there are serious security concerns, funding could be delayed or even canceled. Exactly, so who benefits from that outcome? Hendricks, practical as always, had the most obvious answer. Competitors for the same funding, other major Army programs that would receive those billions if the M1A3 gets cut. Like Project Prometheus, Michael said quietly. The room fell silent. Winters turned to him sharply. How do you know about that? Prometheus is compartmentalized at a higher level than even the M1A3. I have contacts in the Autonomous Systems Division. There have been rumors. Mercer stepped in smoothly. We need to understand all possible motives. If Prometheus is being positioned as an alternative to the M1A3, that creates a potential conflict of interest. Prometheus is General Hargrove's baby, Hendricks added. He's been pushing for fully autonomous combat vehicles for years. Word is the prototype is nearly operational. Winters frowned. You're suggesting a 3-star general might be involved in sabotaging another Army program? That's a career-ending accusation without rock-solid evidence. I'm not accusing anyone, Mercer clarified. I'm identifying potential motives. Right now, we follow the evidence wherever it leads. He turned to the digital board, which displayed the known timeline of the leak. Let's work backward. The document appeared on 3 forums simultaneously, suggesting a coordinated release. But the document itself had to be created first, using information that only a small group had access to. 15 individuals with the necessary clearance, Winters confirmed. Let's divide them into categories, Mercer directed. Who among them has connections to Prometheus or other competing programs? Who has expressed reservations about the M1A3? Who has the technical expertise to make the specific modifications we identified? As the team began building their investigative framework, Mercer's secure phone vibrated. He checked the screen, a message from Walsh requesting his presence alone. The time had come to discover whether the general was part of the solution or part of the problem. Major General Eleanor Walsh's temporary office at Quantico was spartanly furnished, with only a desk, secure communications equipment, and a single photograph of her late husband, also a general, who had died of cancer 2 years earlier. When Mercer entered, she was standing at the window, staring out at the Virginia countryside. "You wanted to see me, General?" Walsh turned, her expression grave. "Jack, I've just come from a secure call with the Joint Chiefs. The leak has their full attention. I've been authorized to use any resources necessary to contain this situation before the appropriations hearing." "Any resources except direct access to you, apparently," Mercer said, watching her reaction carefully. "Michael Thompson tried to brief you personally on security concerns weeks ago. He was blocked repeatedly." If Walsh was surprised by this information, she didn't show it. Captain Thompson should have gone through proper channels. He did. That's the problem. Something is wrong with those channels. Walsh studied him for a long moment, then reached over to her desk and pressed a button that Mercer recognized as a SCIF protocol initiator. The room's security system engaged with a soft hum, creating a secure environment impervious to electronic surveillance. "Sit down, Jack." Mercer complied, watching as Walsh's official demeanor softened slightly. "What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room. There's a reason Thompson couldn't reach me directly. For the past month, I've been conducting my own investigation into irregularities with the M1A3 program." Mercer felt a surge of relief. Walsh wasn't compromised. She was running a parallel operation. "What kind of irregularities?" "Test data being altered, requirements being modified without proper authorization, and most concerning, technical information being accessed by individuals without a need to know. You suspect a deliberate effort to undermine the program." Walsh nodded. "The M1A3 represents a significant evolutionary advancement in tank design. Not revolutionary, but substantial. It would secure America's armored superiority for at least the next decade." "But there are those who don't want evolution," Mercer said. "They want revolution." "Prometheus." Walsh's mouth tightened. "Hargrove has the ear of several key civilians in the Defense Department. He's convinced them that the era of manned tanks is over, that the future belongs to autonomous weapons platforms." "Is he right?" Walsh considered the question. "Autonomous systems have advantages. No crew risk, potentially faster reaction times. But they also have critical vulnerabilities that Hargrove downplays. Cyber warfare, communications disruption, ethical decision-making in complex environments. The human element," Mercer said quietly. "Exactly. The human element that you've spent your career defending." She paused. "That's why I called you in. I need someone who understands that tanks aren't just machines. They're extensions of the men and women who operate them." Mercer leaned forward. "Michael Thompson deliberately modified technical specifications in the leaked document. He claims it was part of a sanctioned deception operation that you authorized." Walsh didn't seem surprised. "I did authorize a limited deception operation 6 months ago, standard procedure for any major weapons program, but I never authorized anything approaching the scale of this leak. Thompson believes someone issued falsified orders in your name, expanding the operation to include much more sensitive details." "That would explain a lot," Walsh mused. "The question is, who has the authority and access to issue such orders convincingly? Someone high up the chain, someone with a vested interest in seeing the M1A3 fail." Mercer hesitated, then committed to his suspicion. "Someone like Lieutenant General William Hargrove." Walsh didn't immediately dismiss the suggestion, which told Mercer volumes about her own suspicions. "Hargrove and I have had our disagreements about the future of armored warfare, but sabotaging a major army program? That would be treason, Jack. Some might call it the fog of bureaucratic war. Budget battles fought by other means." Walsh stood, pacing the small office. "We need proof. Hard evidence linking Hargrove or someone in his circle to the expanded leak authorization. That's what my team is working on. But we need to move quickly. The appropriations hearing is 3 weeks away." 2 weeks, Walsh corrected. "They moved it up yesterday, supposedly to accommodate the chairman's schedule. The timing was too convenient to be coincidence. Someone was accelerating the timeline, putting additional pressure on the M1A3 program." "There's more," Mercer said. "The technical modifications in the leaked document. They're specific, sophisticated, designed to mislead without being obviously wrong. Only someone with intimate knowledge of the M1A3's true capabilities could make those changes effectively, limiting our suspect pool considerably, and raising another possibility we need to consider," Mercer added reluctantly. "What if Michael Thompson isn't telling me the whole truth? What if he's involved more deeply than he admits?" Walsh's expression hardened. "Captain Thompson has been one of the M1A3's strongest advocates. His work on the fire control system is revolutionary. Why would he sabotage a program he helped build? I don't know, but I can't ignore the possibility. He had the access and the expertise. And he's Robert's son, Walsh said softly, the son of your best friend. The reminder stung, which is precisely why I need to remain objective. I promised Robert I'd look after his boy, but my first duty is to the truth. Walsh nodded in understanding. Investigate every angle, Jack, including Thompson, but tread carefully. If Hargrove is behind this, he won't hesitate to destroy anyone who gets in his way. I'm not exactly easy to destroy, Eleanor. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. No, you never were. That's why you're here. She deactivated the room's security measures with another press of the button. You have my full authority to access any aspect of the M1A3 program. I'll make sure those orders can't be countermanded, even by Hargrove. As Mercer turned to leave, Walsh added, and Jack, remember what you told those young officers at Fort Knox? A tank is only as good as the men inside it. The same is true for this investigation. Trust your instincts, but verify everything. The Nevada sun beat down mercilessly as the Prometheus prototype executed a flawless firing sequence, its main gun tracking and engaging 5 targets in under 15 seconds. From the safety of the control bunker, Dr. Warren watched the display monitors with professional satisfaction. Impressive, said the man beside him. Samuel Chen was ostensibly a civilian contractor overseeing software integration for the Prometheus project. His actual role within Defense Intelligence remained classified, even to most working on the program. The targeting algorithms have improved significantly since the last demonstration. Warren nodded. We've incorporated machine learning based on thousands of combat scenarios. The system now anticipates target movement patterns more effectively than human gunners. And the ethical parameters? This was the question Warren had been dreading. The system strictly adheres to rules of engagement. It can distinguish between combatants and non-combatants with 99.7% accuracy in controlled conditions. Chen raised an eyebrow. And in uncontrolled conditions, real-world scenarios with civilians and enemy combatants intermixed, the accuracy drops to approximately 93%, still better than human operators under stress. 7% error rate in identifying civilians would be politically untenable, Chen observed coolly. The first time Prometheus mistakes a family for insurgents, the program is finished. Warren removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. That's why human oversight remains critical. The remote operators can override autonomous targeting decisions, assuming communications aren't jammed or compromised. Chen's tone made it clear he considered this a significant vulnerability. Have you shared these concerns with General Hargrove? I've tried. He's focused on the advantages, not the limitations. Chen studied the monitors as Prometheus navigated a complex obstacle course, its low-profile hull handling terrain that would challenge conventional tanks. Impressive engineering, but perhaps premature for full deployment. Chen turned to face Warren directly. You're aware of the situation with the M1A3 program? Warren tensed. The security breach? Yes, though I don't have details. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? Just weeks before both programs faced the Appropriations Committee. What are you suggesting? Chen's expression remained neutral, merely an observation. Budget battles in the Pentagon can be as fierce as any shooting war, and with trillions at stake, the temptation to undermine competing programs must be considerable. Warren felt a chill despite the desert heat. If you're implying Prometheus personnel might be involved in sabotaging the M1A3, that's a serious accusation. I'm not accusing anyone, Doctor. I'm simply noting that when two programs compete for the same limited funding, and one suffers a critical security breach while the other advances rapidly, questions naturally arise. Warren turned back to the monitors, watching as Prometheus completed its demonstration run perfectly. Too perfectly, perhaps. They'd programmed it to showcase its strengths while carefully controlling for situations that might expose its weaknesses, just as Hargrove was doing in his presentations to Congress. The future of American armored warfare hangs in the balance, Chen continued. The question is whether that future will include human judgment in the critical chain of decision, or whether we'll surrender those choices entirely to algorithms. Algorithms we designed, Warren pointed out, based on parameters we established with our limited human understanding of warfare's complexities. Chen paused. History is littered with weapons that work perfectly in tests and failed catastrophically in combat. Before Warren could respond, the bunker door opened and Lieutenant General Hargrove strode in, flanked by aides. Gentlemen, outstanding results today. The targeting sequence was flawless. Hargrove's enthusiasm was palpable. The Appropriations Committee will have no choice but to recognize Prometheus as the future once they see these capabilities demonstrated. General, Chen acknowledged with a respectful nod. Dr. Warren was just updating me on the ethical parameters governing target discrimination. Hargrove waved a hand dismissively. Technical details we can refine after securing program funding. The important message is clear. Prometheus represents a paradigm shift in land warfare. The M1A3, for all its incremental improvements, is fundamentally obsolete. Men in metal boxes, vulnerable and limited by human reaction times. With respect, General, Warren ventured, those men bring judgment and adaptability that our systems haven't fully replicated. Hargrove's smile tightened. Judgment that leads to hesitation. Adaptability constrained by fear. Prometheus never tires, never fears, never disobeys. The perfect soldier. Until something goes wrong, Chen said quietly. Something always goes wrong in war, Mr. Chen. The difference is Prometheus can be fixed with software updates. Dead tank crews cannot be restored so easily. Hargrove checked his watch. I have a video conference with the Joint Chiefs in 20 minutes. Continue the testing sequence. I want comprehensive data for next week's preliminary briefing. As Hargrove departed, Chen turned to Warren with a meaningful look. The perfect soldier who never questions orders. One wonders if that's a feature or a flaw from the general's perspective. Warren had no answer. Instead, he watched the monitors as Prometheus rotated its turret toward the next target, executing its programming with mechanical precision. Perfect, emotionless, and utterly without the moral capacity to question whether its targets deserve to die. Back at Quantico, Mercer found Hendricks alone in their temporary operations center, studying personnel files with intense concentration. Find anything interesting? Mercer asked, pouring himself coffee from a pot that had clearly been sitting too long. Maybe. Hendricks pulled up a file on the main screen. I've been reviewing the background of everyone with access to the leaked information, looking for connections to Prometheus or Hargrove. The screen displayed the service record of Lieutenant Colonel James Foster, one of the M1A3's systems integration managers. Foster served under Hargrove in the 3rd Armored Division 8 years ago. Received 2 early promotions with Hargrove's recommendation. Then, 18 months ago, he was assigned to the M1A3 program, despite having no previous experience with tank development. Mercer studied the file. He'd be perfectly positioned to feed information to Hargrove. Exactly, and there's more. Hendricks pulled up financial records. Foster's brother-in-law works for Tech War Industries, the primary contractor developing Prometheus's AI systems. Nothing illegal about the connection, but it certainly creates potential divided loyalties. It was a promising lead, but not conclusive. Keep digging. See if Foster accessed the specific systems detailed in the leak. Already on it, Winters is pulling those logs now. Mercer nodded approval. Despite his initial reservations, Hendricks was proving to be a thorough investigator. The former NCO brought a practical perspective that complemented Winters' counterintelligence expertise. Where's Thompson? Testing the digital forensics on the leaked document, trying to identify any metadata or hidden signatures that might point to its origin. Mercer grunted acknowledgement and moved to the window, staring out at the training fields where Marines conducted drills in the distance. His conversation with Walsh had clarified some things while complicating others. She clearly suspected Hargrove, but needed definitive proof before moving against a superior officer. And then there was Michael. Walsh trusted him implicitly, yet Mercer couldn't shake a lingering doubt. The young captain had admitted to modifying classified information. Even with good intentions, that crossed a line that career military officers were conditioned never to cross. The door opened and Michael entered with a tablet in hand. Sir, I think I found something. Mercer turned. What is it? I've been analyzing the digital structure of the leaked document, looking for any artifacts that might identify who compiled it. Michael placed the tablet on the central table, bringing up a complex technical display. Most identifiers were stripped, as you'd expect from professionals, but there's a pattern in how the document was constructed that matches internal formatting used by Tech War Industries. Hendricks looked up sharply. Foster's brother-in-law works for Tech War. Exactly. And Tech War is the primary contractor for Prometheus's AI systems. Michael highlighted a section of code. This particular document assembly pattern is unique to their proprietary document management system. Mercer studied the evidence. So someone at Tech War may have compiled the document using information fed to them from inside the M1A3 program. That would create plausible deniability, Hendricks noted. Foster provides the information but doesn't create the actual leaked document. TechWar assembles it but can claim they thought it was for legitimate purposes. We need to look deeper into TechWar, Mercer decided. Not just their connection to Foster, but their entire relationship with Prometheus and Hargrove. Michael hesitated. Sir, there's more. I did some digging into TechWar's international operations. They have a subsidiary in Singapore that develops commercial versions of military targeting algorithms. Dual-use technology, Hendricks said. Civilian applications with military potential. Yes, and that subsidiary recently signed a development contract with a Chinese defense contractor. The implication hung heavy in the room. TechWar was potentially providing technology with military applications to America's primary strategic rival, while simultaneously working on one of America's most sensitive defense programs. If TechWar is feeding technology to the Chinese, and they're also behind the M1A3 leak, Hendricks began, then this isn't just about budget battles between competing tank programs, Mercer finished grimly. It's about compromising American military superiority on multiple fronts. The stakes had just risen dramatically. What had appeared to be internal Pentagon politics might actually be something far more dangerous, a deliberate effort to undermine America's armored capability while advancing a potentially vulnerable autonomous system that could be compromised by the same foreign interests. We need to brief Walsh immediately, Mercer said, and we need to move carefully. If TechWar and Hargrove are connected in this, we're dealing with powerful interests who won't hesitate to destroy anyone who threatens them. As if on cue, Mercer's secure phone rang. The caller ID showed Winters. He answered, putting it on speaker. Colonel, we have a problem. Winters' voice was tight with urgency. Someone just accessed the secure server containing our investigation files. Everything we've compiled was copied to an external source. We've been compromised. Mercer exchanged alarmed looks with Hendricks and Michael. Who had the access codes? That's just it, sir. They used General Walsh's credentials. An icy silence fell over the room. Either Walsh had accessed their files, which made no sense given she just authorized their investigation, or someone had compromised a major general's security credentials. Lock down everything, Mercer ordered. Transfer what we have to a secure air-gapped system. No network connections whatsoever. Already done, sir, but whoever accessed our files has everything we've discovered so far. They know exactly what we know. And who we suspect, Mercer thought, but didn't say. They had been investigating at Walsh's direction for less than 24 hours, and already their operation was compromised. Someone with extremely high-level access was working against them. The question was who, and more importantly, what they would do now that Mercer's team was getting close to the truth. Night had fallen over Quantico when Mercer finally left the secure facility. The investigation had shifted into crisis mode after the security breach. Winters had instituted compartmentalized protocols, limiting information sharing even within their small team. Trust, already in short supply, had become a rare commodity. As Mercer walked to his temporary quarters, the weight of the day's revelations pressed down on him. What had begun as an investigation into a security breach had expanded into something far more complex. Potential treason, corporate espionage, and a fundamental battle for the future of American armored warfare. He was so deep in thought that he almost missed the figure standing in the shadows near his quarters. His combat instincts, honed through decades of service, triggered an immediate response. His hand moved toward the sidearm he wasn't carrying on base. At ease, Colonel. If I wanted to harm you, I wouldn't be standing here in the open. The man stepped forward into the pool of light from a nearby lamp. He was in his early 50s, dressed in civilian clothes that couldn't quite disguise his military bearing. His face was vaguely familiar, though Mercer couldn't immediately place it. Samuel Chen, Defense Intelligence Agency, we need to talk. Mercer studied the man, remembering now where he'd seen the face. Chen's photo had appeared in some of the briefing materials, though his role hadn't been specified. My quarters are likely monitored, Mercer said cautiously. Chen nodded toward a nearby bench, positioned away from security cameras. 5 minutes, then we both returned to our official roles. They walked in silence to the bench and sat, two men who appeared to casual observers to be merely taking a break from long workdays. You're investigating the M1A3 leak, Chen began without preamble. You're looking in the right direction, but you don't have the full picture. And you do? Parts of it. I've been embedded with the Prometheus program for the past year, officially as a technical liaison, unofficially to monitor certain concerns about its development. Mercer kept his expression neutral. What kind of concerns? Ethical parameters, decision-making protocols. The fundamental question of whether we should remove humans from life or death decisions on the battlefield. Chen paused. And more recently, whether certain parties might be deliberately compromising the M1A3 to advance Prometheus as the only viable alternative. Hargrove, Mercer said, among others. The general is the public face, but Tech War Industries has the most to gain financially. They stand to receive billions if Prometheus becomes America's main battle tank. And they have connections to foreign defense contractors. Chen's eyebrows raised slightly. You've been thorough. Yes, Tech War's international relationships are concerning, particularly their work in Asia. Why come to me now? Because your investigation was compromised this afternoon. Someone with high-level access is working actively against you. I needed to warn you before they make their next move. Mercer considered his options. Chen could be feeding him disinformation, or he could be a genuine ally with critical intelligence. In either case, engaging cautiously seemed the best approach. What exactly is this next move you're concerned about? Discrediting you and your team, particularly Captain Thompson. Mercer felt a chill. Why Thompson specifically? Because he's the most vulnerable. His modification of classified documents, even as part of a sanctioned deception operation, provides ammunition. They'll use it to paint him as the source of the leak, possibly even suggest he's working for foreign interests. That's absurd. Thompson is one of the most dedicated officers I know. Dedication can be twisted to look like obsession. His commitment to the M1A3 program could be portrayed as blinding him to its flaws, driving him to sabotage Prometheus to protect his pet project. Chen stood. They're building a case against him as we speak. When it drops, it will be devastating, not just to him, but to your entire investigation. Mercer rose to face Chen. Who is they? Hargrove, Tech War, someone else? All I can tell you is to watch your back, and Thompson's, and to look beyond the obvious. This isn't just about two competing tank programs. It's about the future of warfare itself, and who controls it. Chen checked his watch. My 5 minutes are up. I was never here, Colonel. Before Mercer could press for more information, Chen walked away, disappearing into the darkness beyond the pool of lamplight. Mercer stood alone, processing the warning. If Chen was right, Michael Thompson was being set up as a scapegoat. The perfect fall guy, a dedicated officer who had admitted to modifying classified documents, whose commitment to the M1A3 could be twisted into a motive. He needed to warn Michael immediately, but as he turned toward the operations center, his secure phone vibrated with an incoming message. It was from Walsh, direct and urgent. Report to my office immediately. Thompson in custody, situation critical. The trap had already been sprung. Mercer arrived at General Walsh's office to find it transformed into an impromptu war room. Large security personnel flanked the entrance, scanning him with hard eyes as he approached. Inside, Walsh stood behind her desk, face drawn with tension. Across from her sat Lieutenant General William Hargrove, his 3 stars gleaming under the harsh overhead lights. And between them, seated in a chair that suddenly looked like an interrogation setup, was Michael Thompson. The young captain's face showed signs of stress, though he maintained his military bearing. When he saw Mercer enter, a flash of relief crossed his features. Colonel Mercer, Hargrove's voice was cordial but carried an undercurrent of satisfaction. Thank you for joining us. We were just discussing Captain Thompson's extracurricular activities. Walsh's expression remained neutral, but Mercer knew her well enough to detect the tightly controlled anger beneath her professional demeanor. Colonel, it appears Captain Thompson has been engaging in unauthorized modifications of classified documents that subsequently appeared on foreign intelligence monitoring sites. With all due respect, ma'am, we already established that Captain Thompson was executing a sanctioned deception operation, Mercer replied carefully, measuring every word. Hargrove's thin smile widened. Yes, the captain has made that claim. However, our investigation has uncovered no such authorization in the official record. Mercer felt the trap closing. General Walsh issued the authorization herself. I authorized a standard counterintelligence operation 6 months ago, Walsh said, her eyes communicating a warning to Mercer. What I did not authorize was the comprehensive technical disclosure that appeared on those sites. Michael straightened in his chair. Ma'am, the expanded parameters came through official channels with your electronic signature and authentication codes. Which I never issued, Walsh responded. My authentication has been compromised. Mercer began to understand the game. Someone had issued false orders using Walsh's credentials. then erased all record of those orders. Now Michael appeared to have acted without authorization, making him the perfect scapegoat. Fortunately, Hargrove interjected, we've identified the likely explanation. He slid a folder across the desk. Captain Thompson's financial records. Note the deposits from numbered accounts in Singapore over the past 6 months. Accounts linked to a subsidiary of a Chinese defense contractor. Mercer opened the folder, his stomach tightening. The documents inside showed regular deposits of $10,000 to an account in Michael's name. Money that, if these records were to be believed, constituted payment for classified information. This is fabricated, Michael said, his voice level despite the accusation. I've never seen that account. I don't have that money. The evidence suggests otherwise, Captain, Hargrove replied. We're also examining your communications with certain foreign nationals during your last leave in Germany, meetings that you failed to report as required by security protocols. Mercer watched the scenario unfold with growing certainty. This wasn't an improvised attack. It was a carefully prepared character assassination. Chen's warning had come too late. General Walsh, Mercer said formally, I request time to investigate these allegations properly. Captain Thompson has been instrumental in identifying the actual source of the leak, which points to connections between tech war industries and foreign defense entities. Hargrove's expression hardened. Tech War is a trusted defense contractor with an exemplary security record. These baseless accusations appear to be an attempt to deflect attention from Captain Thompson's own activities. Walsh remained silent for a moment, her eyes moving between the three men. Finally, she spoke with careful precision. Colonel Mercer, you will continue your investigation into the original leak. Captain Thompson will remain in custody pending further review of these serious allegations. General Hargrove protested, but given the evidence, I strongly recommend transferring this entire investigation to Army counterintelligence. Colonel Mercer's personal connection to Thompson compromises his objectivity. Colonel Mercer's investigation continues, Walsh said flatly. However, I am temporarily reassigning Captain Thompson to restricted quarters. His access to classified systems is suspended pending resolution of these allegations. It was a compromise, Mercer realized. Walsh was buying them time while appearing to take the accusations seriously. But how much time, and would it be enough? I'll have MPs escort Captain Thompson to quarters, Hargrove said, reaching for the phone. That won't be necessary, Walsh countered. Colonel Mercer can escort him personally. After all, they have served together. Another small victory. Walsh was ensuring Michael wouldn't be isolated or intimidated by Hargrove's people. Thank you, General, Mercer said, meeting Walsh's gaze with silent gratitude. I'll ensure Captain Thompson complies with all restrictions. As they left the office, Mercer felt Hargrove's eyes boring into his back. The general had fired his opening salvo, but had clearly expected Walsh to capitulate entirely. Her resistance, however minor, had disrupted his plans. The question now was how Hargrove would adjust those plans, and how much time Mercer had before the next attack. Silence stretched between Mercer and Michael as they walked across the base toward the officers' quarters. Armed guards followed at a discreet distance, a visible reminder of Michael's changed status. They were waiting for me when I left the operations center, Michael finally said, his voice low. Full security detail acting on Hargrove's direct orders. Didn't even let me gather my personal items. Hargrove moved faster than I expected, Mercer replied. We must be getting close to something important. Those financial records are completely fabricated. I've never seen that account. I know, it's too perfect, too convenient. Classic character assassination technique. Michael glanced back at their escorts. They're going to keep building their case against me. Next, they'll find communications with foreign agents, maybe classified documents in my possession that I never touched. Walsh bought us some time by keeping me on the investigation. Hargrove wanted you isolated and the investigation transferred to his people. They'll try again. Hargrove has too much influence to accept this setback. They reached the officers' quarters, a nondescript building that would now serve as Michael's prison. The guards took positions outside as Mercer accompanied Michael inside. Once in the privacy of the small room, Mercer checked for obvious surveillance devices. Finding none, he still kept his voice low. We need to move quickly. Winters and Hendricks are still running down the tech war connection. I met someone last night who confirmed our suspicions about their foreign dealings. Who? Samuel Chen, Defense Intelligence. He's been embedded in the Prometheus program, watching Hargrove and Tech War. Michael sat heavily on the bed. Can he help clear me? Maybe, but we can't count on it. This frame job is too well constructed. We need hard evidence linking tech war to the leak and exposing their relationship with Chinese defense contractors. The technical signature I found in the document structure, Michael suggested. It's circumstantial, but points directly to tech war's proprietary systems. It's a start. I'll have Winters dig deeper. Mercer paused, considering their next move. There's something else. Chen mentioned ethical concerns about Prometheus, problems with its targeting parameters and decision-making protocols. Michael's expression sharpened. The AI system. That's been my concern all along. I reviewed some of the preliminary testing data as part of our comparative analysis with M1A3 fire control systems. There were anomalies they never adequately explained. What kind of anomalies? Targeting errors in complex environments. The system would occasionally select non-threat targets when multiple options were present. They claimed it was a calibration issue, but the pattern suggested something more fundamental in the decision algorithms. Mercer considered this. If Prometheus has critical flaws in its targeting systems, and if Hargrove and TechWar are hiding those flaws to secure funding, then sabotaging the M1A3 becomes even more critical for them. Mercer nodded. That's our angle. We need to expose the Prometheus flaws while clearing your name. How? I'm confined to quarters and you'll be watched constantly now. Mercer smiled grimly. They're watching for conventional moves, but I didn't survive 3 wars by being conventional. He checked his watch. I need to get back before they get suspicious. Keep your head down. Trust no one except me, Winters, or Hendricks. As Mercer turned to leave, Michael called after him. Colonel, my father always said you were the most tenacious tank commander he'd ever served with. Said once you locked onto a target, nothing would shake you off. Mercer paused at the door, memories of Robert Thompson flooding back. Your father was the finest gunner I ever had, and I don't intend to let his son become collateral damage in Hargrove's war for funding. The operations center was buzzing with tension when Mercer returned. Winters looked up from her computer station, her expression grim. How bad is it? Mercer asked without preamble. Thompson's been officially listed as under investigation for espionage, she replied. His security clearances are suspended. Half our investigative avenues just got cut off. Hendricks approached with a secure tablet. They're moving fast, sir. Hargrove has filed a formal request with the Secretary of the Army to have you removed from the investigation, citing conflict of interest due to your personal relationship with Thompson. Walsh won't let that happen, Mercer said, though with less certainty than he would have liked. She's fighting it, but Hargrove has support from several civilian appointees in the Defense Department. Hendricks hesitated. There's more. TechWar Industries has filed a formal complaint alleging that Thompson and possibly others on our team have engaged in corporate defamation by suggesting their involvement in the leak. Legal barriers being erected to obstruct their investigation. Exactly what Mercer would have done in Hargrove's position. Cut off access, isolate the troublemakers, then discredit them completely. They're anticipating our moves, Mercer observed, which means someone is still feeding them information about our investigation. I've implemented stricter compartmentalization, Winters assured him. Only the 3 of us have full access now. Everyone else gets only what they absolutely need to know. Mercer nodded approval. What progress on TechWar's foreign connections? Winters brought up a complex diagram on the main screen. TechWar Industries is the parent company. Their main defense contracts are all with the U.S. government, primarily the Prometheus program. But they have a subsidiary, TechWar Global Solutions, headquartered in Singapore. The same Singapore where those mysterious deposits to Thompson's account allegedly originated, Hendricks noted. Exactly. TechWar Global Solutions specializes in civilian applications of military technology, primarily targeting and recognition systems for autonomous vehicles, security systems, that sort of thing. Mercer studied the diagram. And their clients? That's where it gets interesting. Among their biggest customers is the Huangshan Group, a Chinese conglomerate with documented ties to the People's Liberation Army. Selling American military technology to the Chinese, Mercer said. Even with the civilian veneer, that should raise red flags. It would, except TechWar has structured everything to appear completely legitimate. The technology they provide Huangshan is officially classified as civilian dual use. They have all the proper export licenses. But the underlying algorithms, the core technology, could easily be adapted for military applications, Winters confirmed, particularly for autonomous weapon systems like the Chinese are developing. Mercer paced the room, mind racing. So TechWar develops cutting-edge AI targeting systems for Prometheus using American tax dollars. Then their Singapore subsidiary sells civilian versions of similar technology to Chinese front companies, which gives China the benefit of American military research without the development costs, Hendricks finished. And if Prometheus replaces the M1A3 as America's main battle tank, then TechWar's influence on American defense systems grows even larger, Mercer concluded, creating an even bigger pipeline for their technology to flow overseas. It was a perfect corporate espionage operation, technically legal, incredibly profitable, and devastating to American military superiority. And Hargrove, whether wittingly or unwittingly, was facilitating it by championing Prometheus. We need to take this to Walsh, Mercer decided. This goes beyond the leak now. This is about national security at the highest level. Winters hesitated. Sir, we still don't have definitive proof connecting TechWar to the actual leak. And with Thompson compromised, our technical evidence is tainted. She was right. They had discovered a concerning pattern, but lacked the smoking gun that would convince skeptical authorities, especially with Hargrove and his allies actively working to discredit them. Then we need that proof, Mercer said firmly. Hendricks, I want everything on Lieutenant Colonel Foster, his communications with TechWar, his relationship with Hargrove, everything. Already on it, sir. Winters, dig deeper into TechWar Global Solutions. Focus on personnel exchanges between the parent company and the subsidiary. Anyone who works on Prometheus and then transfers to Singapore. What about you, sir? Winters asked. Mercer checked his watch. I'm going to speak with someone who might have insights we lack. Someone embedded in the Prometheus program itself. Samuel Chen was waiting in a small coffee shop just outside the Quantico main gate. The location offered a veneer of privacy while remaining public enough to discourage any aggressive moves. Chen nursed a cup of black coffee, his demeanor casual, but his eyes constantly scanning for threats. You took a risk contacting me so soon after our last meeting, he observed as Mercer slid into the seat across from him. Time is a luxury we no longer have, Mercer replied. Thompson has been confined to quarters, accused of espionage. My investigation is being systematically undermined. Chen nodded, unsurprised. Hargrove moves efficiently. I warned you they were building a case against Thompson. I need more than warnings now. I need actionable intelligence about Prometheus and TechWar. A waitress approached, but Chen waved her away with a polite smile. When they were alone again, he leaned forward slightly. What exactly are you looking for, Colonel? Evidence that Prometheus has critical flaws that Hargrove and TechWar are concealing. Evidence of TechWar transferring sensitive technology to Chinese interests. Anything that would validate our concerns and clear Thompson's name. Chen considered this. Those are two separate issues. Proving technology transfer would require access to TechWar's internal communications, which I don't have. But regarding Prometheus flaws, he paused. I can help there. How? Prometheus has undergone 7 major testing sequences. The published results show near-perfect performance, but I've been present for all 7 tests. The actual results were considerably more problematic. What kind of problems? Target discrimination errors, delayed response times in complex environments. Most concerning, a tendency to prioritize perceived threats based on incorrect parameters. Meaning? Meaning if Prometheus detects 10 potential threats, it sometimes selects targets based on apparent weapon capability rather than imminent hostile action. In one test, it prioritized a vehicle with a disabled heavy weapon over active shooters with small arms. Mercer understood the implications immediately. That could be catastrophic in mixed combat environments, civilian areas, peacekeeping operations. Exactly, but Hargrove dismissed these as edge cases that could be resolved with software updates. He refused to document them in the official testing records. I need those records, Chen, the real ones. Chen shook his head. They don't exist, at least not officially. Hargrove ensured that test failures were classified as calibration runs rather than formal evaluations. There must be something, video recordings, raw data logs, witness statements. Chen was silent for a moment, considering. There might be something. Dr. Elliot Warren, Prometheus's chief designer, kept his own testing records. He was increasingly concerned about Hargrove's dismissal of the targeting anomalies. Would Warren talk to us? Unlikely. He's dedicated his career to Prometheus. Publicly admitting its flaws would destroy everything he's built. Chen paused. But he's also a scientist with genuine ethical concerns. If approached correctly, he might be persuaded to share his data. How do I reach him? That's the problem. Warren rarely leaves the Nevada testing facility. Hargrove keeps him isolated, ostensibly for security reasons. Chen checked his watch. However, there's an opportunity coming. In 3 days, Prometheus will conduct its final demonstration before the appropriations hearing. Warren will be there, along with Hargrove and key congressional staffers. Where? Aberdeen Proving Ground. They'll be showcasing Prometheus against target drones and simulated threats. Mercer processed this information. Aberdeen was the Army's premier testing facility for armored vehicles. If Prometheus was being demonstrated there, it would be under controlled conditions designed to highlight its strengths and minimize its weaknesses. I need to be at that demonstration. Chen raised an eyebrow. Hargrove would never allow it. He knows you're investigating Prometheus connections to the leak. Then I need a different approach, one that Hargrove won't see coming. Mercer thought for a moment. The M1A3 is also at Aberdeen undergoing final systems integration. What if Walsh ordered a comparative demonstration, M1A3 versus Prometheus, side by side? Hargrove would refuse, not if the order came from above, not if it was presented as an opportunity to showcase Prometheus's superiority. Chen considered this. It might work. Hargrove is confident, perhaps overconfident, in Prometheus's capabilities. He believes it will outperform any manned system in demonstrations. Because the demonstrations are designed to favor autonomous operation, Mercer said. But what if we changed the parameters, created scenarios that tested decision-making in complex environments? The very scenarios where Prometheus struggles, Chen nodded slowly. It could work, but you'd need authority from above Walsh to make it happen. Leave that to me. Mercer rose from the table. I need one more thing from you, Chen. Any information you can find on TechWar's personnel transfers between their domestic and Singapore operations, particularly anyone involved with Prometheus. I'll see what I can do, but be careful, Mercer. You're challenging powerful interests, the kind that can end more than just your career. I've faced worse odds, Mercer replied. In Iraq, we were outgunned and outnumbered, but we had one advantage they didn't. What was that? We knew what we were fighting for. Mercer placed money for the untouched coffee on the table. And so do I now. The call with the Secretary of the Army lasted 23 minutes. By Pentagon standards, it was an eternity. Mercer stood at attention in Walsh's office as she conducted the conversation on speakerphone, presenting their proposal with the precision of an artillery barrage. Mr. Secretary, the Appropriations Committee is being asked to choose between two fundamental approaches to the future of American armored warfare. A direct comparative demonstration would provide essential data for that decision. The Secretary's voice crackled through the secure line. General Hargrove has expressed concerns about the M1A3 security breach compromising such a demonstration. With respect, Mr. Secretary, that concern is precisely why this demonstration is necessary. If the M1A3 has been compromised, as General Hargrove suggests, then Prometheus should easily outperform it. If not, then perhaps the breach has been overstated. A long pause followed. Mercer could almost hear the political calculations happening in the Secretary's mind. The M1A3 represented traditional military thinking, evolutionary improvements to proven platforms. Prometheus offered a revolutionary leap that would please congressional futurists and defense contractors alike. Who would operate the M1A3 during this demonstration? Walsh glanced at Mercer. Colonel Jack Mercer, sir, 30 years of tank command experience, including combat operations in Desert Storm and Iraq, one of our most decorated armor officers. Another pause. And Prometheus? Sir Elliot Warren would oversee its autonomous operations with a standard remote operation team as backup. I see. The Secretary sighed audibly. Very well, General. You have authorization for a limited comparative demonstration. 3 scenarios jointly developed by both program teams, to be conducted the day after tomorrow at Aberdeen before the scheduled Prometheus demonstration. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. One more thing, General. This demonstration will be observed by the Full Appropriations Subcommittee. Whatever the outcome, it will significantly influence the funding decision. The line went dead. Walsh looked at Mercer, her expression unreadable. You just bet the entire future of American armored forces on your ability to outperform an autonomous system that's been specifically designed to replace human operators. Yes, ma'am. And you did it while under investigation, with your key technical advisor accused of espionage. Yes, ma'am. Walsh's stern expression finally cracked into a small smile. Just like Baghdad, outgunned, outnumbered, but too damn stubborn to back down. It worked then, General. Let's hope it works now. Walsh's expression turned serious again. Hargrove will ensure the demonstration scenarios favor Prometheus. You'll be at a significant disadvantage. I'm counting on it, ma'am. The more he manipulates the demonstration, the more desperate he appears, and desperate men make mistakes. Walsh studied him for a long moment. What do you need to prepare? Access to the M1A3 systems and current documentation. I need to know exactly what I'll be working with. Done. I'll have the Aberdeen team prepare the tank for your arrival tomorrow. And one more thing, ma'am. I need Captain Thompson temporarily released to serve as my gunner. Walsh's eyebrows shot up. Thompson is under investigation for espionage. There's no way Hargrove would allow him access to the M1A3, which is precisely why I need him, ma'am. Hargrove expects me to use standard crew procedures. Having Thompson in the gunner's seat introduces a variable he can't predict. And if Thompson actually is compromised, if the financial evidence isn't fabricated, Mercer met her gaze steadily. Then I'll be locked in a tank with a potential traitor, operating a multi-billion-dollar weapon system. But I've known Michael since he was a young. I served with his father, and every instinct I have says he's being framed. Walsh considered this, then nodded once. I'll make it happen. But he'll be under guard except when actually in the tank, and the ammunition will be training rounds only. That's all I need, ma'am. As Mercer turned to leave, Walsh added, Jack, you know what happens if you're wrong about Thompson, if he really has been compromised. Yes, ma'am, I lose everything, my career, my reputation, possibly my freedom. And if you're right, Mercer smiled grimly, then Hargrove loses everything, and the future of American armored warfare remains in human hands, where it belongs. The Nevada testing facility was in chaos. News of the comparative demonstration had reached Hargrove while he was observing Prometheus's final pre-deployment tests, and his reaction had been volcanic. This is an outrageous political maneuver, he shouted into his secure phone, pacing the control room while technicians pretended not to hear. The M1A3 program is compromised. Allowing it to participate in a direct comparison with Prometheus endangers national security. Dr. Warren watched from his station, outwardly calm, but inwardly concerned. He had never seen Hargrove so agitated. The general's usual confident demeanor had cracked, revealing something darker beneath. No, Mr. Secretary, I am not questioning your authority, Hargrove continued, moderating his tone with visible effort. I am expressing legitimate security concerns. Yes, sir, I understand. We will comply. He ended the call and stood silently for a moment, his back to the room. When he finally turned, his expression was composed, but his eyes burned with barely controlled rage. Dr. Warren, we're conducting a comparative demonstration with the M1A3 at Aberdeen. Day after tomorrow. Warren nodded cautiously. I heard, General. May I ask what scenarios we'll be testing? We're developing them now. 3 scenarios: target acquisition and engagement, tactical mobility, and threat response in complex environments. The last one made Warren's stomach tighten. Complex environments were precisely where Prometheus's targeting algorithms showed their most concerning flaws. General, regarding the complex environment scenario, perhaps we should review the latest targeting performance data. There are still some calibration issues that... The targeting system is fine, Doctor, Hargrove cut him off. Any remaining anomalies are well within acceptable parameters, Warren persisted. With respect, sir, our last 3 tests showed consistent errors in discriminating between primary and secondary threats when multiple targets were present. In a demonstration setting, we'll ensure the targeting parameters are clear and unambiguous, Hargrove interrupted. This isn't a combat deployment, Doctor. It's a controlled demonstration designed to showcase Prometheus's capabilities to technology-focused congressional staffers who determine our funding. The implication was clear. The demonstration would be engineered to highlight Prometheus's strengths while concealing its weaknesses. Warren had participated in enough Pentagon programs to understand the politics, but something about this felt different, more desperate, more dangerous. Who will be operating the M1A3? He asked, changing tack. Colonel Jack Mercer, Hargrove replied, his tone conveying clear disdain. An old-school tank commander with obsolete tactical thinking. Exactly the kind of officer who refuses to accept that the future belongs to autonomous systems. Warren knew Mercer by reputation only, a highly decorated combat veteran with extensive experience in both Desert Storm and the Iraq War. Not someone to be underestimated, despite Hargrove's dismissive attitude. And his crew? That's the interesting part, Hargrove's expression darkened. He's requested Captain Michael Thompson as his gunner. The officer under investigation for the M1A3 leak, the very same. Walsh has temporarily released him from confinement for the demonstration. a completely inappropriate decision that further demonstrates her bias toward the M1A3 program. Warren considered this development. Why would Mercer specifically request an officer under investigation for espionage? Unless, you think Mercer knows something about Thompson's case, something exculpatory? Hargrove's sharp glance suggested Warren had struck a nerve. What I think, Doctor, is that old loyalties are clouding judgment. Mercer served with Thompson's father. He's letting personal connections interfere with his duty. Or he knows Thompson is being framed, Warren thought, but didn't say. Instead, he focused on the practical implications. How should we prepare Prometheus for this demonstration? We'll run intensive simulation drills using the scenario parameters. I want response times optimized and targeting precision at a maximum. Prometheus needs to outperform Mercer decisively, leaving no doubt about its superiority. And if the complex environment scenario reveals our targeting limitations? Hargrove stepped closer, lowering his voice. Doctor, let me be very clear. The future of this program and your career depends on Prometheus performing flawlessly in this demonstration. Whatever adjustments are necessary to ensure that outcome, make them. The implications were obvious. Hargrove wasn't interested in an honest assessment. He wanted a victory, engineered if necessary. I understand, General, Warren replied carefully. We'll make the necessary preparations. As Hargrove departed to make travel arrangements, Warren returned to his workstation, mind racing. For years, he had compromised, accepting Hargrove's increasingly aggressive timeline despite technical challenges that demanded more careful development. He had rationalized each compromise as necessary for program survival in Washington's brutal budget battles. But now they faced a public demonstration with the lives of soldiers potentially hanging in the balance. If Prometheus replaced manned tanks based on manipulated test results, the consequences in actual combat could be catastrophic. Warren pulled up the secure messaging system on his terminal and began composing a carefully worded message to his former colleague at Aberdeen Proving Ground. Whatever Hargrove might demand, Warren would ensure that at least one person at the demonstration knew exactly what to watch for when Prometheus faced a complex targeting scenario. It wasn't whistleblowing, he told himself. Just professional courtesy between engineers, and perhaps a small step toward redeeming years of ethical compromises. Dawn at Aberdeen Proving Ground painted the sprawling testing ranges in hues of gold and amber. Mercer stood beside the M1A3 Super Abrams, feeling the cool morning air fill his lungs as he conducted his pre-operation inspection. The tank before him represented the pinnacle of American armored warfare evolution, an awesome integration of protective systems, firepower, and mobility. Unlike the standard M1A2 he had commanded in Iraq, the M1A3 featured an enhanced trophy active protection system capable of intercepting advanced anti-tank munitions, a new generation thermal imaging system with unprecedented clarity and range, and a fire control system that could track and engage targets with surgical precision. But most importantly, it still required a human crew. Men making decisions, operating as a team, bringing human judgment to the chaos of combat. Michael Thompson approached, flanked by two armed military police officers. Despite 3 days of confinement and the stress of false accusations, he carried himself with dignity. The MPs released him to Mercer's custody with clear reluctance. Reporting as ordered, sir, Michael said formally, conscious of the observers gathering nearby. Glad to have you, Captain, Mercer replied. Let's get you acquainted with your station. They climbed aboard the tank together, dropping down into the turret. Inside, the layout was familiar yet enhanced. New displays provided better situational awareness. Advanced controls offered more precise weapon handling. But the fundamental relationship between man and machine remained unchanged. Been a while since you operated from the gunner's station, Mercer observed as Michael familiarized himself with the controls. 4 years, sir, but some things you never forget. Mercer nodded approval as he watched Michael's hands move confidently over the fire control system. Your father would be proud. He could identify targets faster than the thermal imaging system, even in the original Abrams. I remember him saying the best technology in the world still needs a human eye to make the final call. Michael looked up. Sir, what exactly are we facing today? 3 scenarios. First is basic target acquisition and engagement. Prometheus will have the advantage there. Its sensors can process multiple targets simultaneously. Second is tactical mobility, navigating obstacles while maintaining firing capability. That one's more balanced. The third is threat response in complex environments. Complex environments, multiple threats with civilian presence, distinguishing hostile from neutral targets under pressure, the kind of scenario where human judgment matters most. Michael nodded understanding, and where Prometheus's algorithms might struggle. But Hargrove will have ensured the scenario parameters minimize that weakness. Counting on it, Mercer checked his watch. The demonstration starts in 2 hours. Congressional observers are already arriving. Hargrove and Warren should be here within the hour. What's our strategy, sir? Mercer smiled grimly. For the first scenario, we accept that Prometheus will likely outperform us in raw target acquisition speed. For the second, we use experience and tactical knowledge to offset Prometheus's superior sensors. And for the third, sir? For the third, we're going to do exactly what Hargrove doesn't expect. We're going to change the rules of engagement. The observation platform overlooking Aberdeen's main testing range gradually filled with uniformed officers and civilians in formal attire. Congressional staffers mixed with defense contractors and military leadership all gathered to witness what had rapidly become the most anticipated demonstration in recent Pentagon memory. Winters and Hendricks positioned themselves strategically, Winters among the congressional observers, Hendricks closer to the technical teams. Their role was to watch for reactions, to identify who seemed nervous, who seemed confident, and most importantly, who seemed to be manipulating events behind the scenes. Lieutenant General Hargrove arrived with characteristic military precision 30 minutes before the scheduled start. He moved through the gathering with practiced ease, shaking hands with key committee members, offering reassurances about Prometheus's capabilities. Behind him, looking considerably less comfortable in the political environment, followed Dr. Elliot Warren. Major General Walsh arrived separately, accompanied by her own technical staff. She acknowledged Hargrove with professional courtesy that didn't quite reach her eyes. 10 minutes before the scheduled start, the two systems rolled into view on the testing range below. The M1A3, with its traditional profile enhanced by the latest generation of composite armor and active protection systems. And beside it, the lower, sleeker form of Prometheus, its unmanned turret giving it a predatory appearance. In the control bunker situated between the observation platform and the range, technicians finalized the demonstration parameters. 3 scenarios, each designed to test specific capabilities essential to modern armored warfare. Up on the observation platform, the chairman of the Appropriations Subcommittee stepped forward to address the gathering. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this unprecedented comparative demonstration. Today we witnessed 2 visions of America's armored future. The M1A3 Super Abrams, representing the continued evolution of our battle-proven main battle tank, and Project Prometheus, a revolutionary autonomous combat system. The chairman gestured toward the 2 vehicles on the range below. Each system will complete 3 testing scenarios, evaluated on speed, accuracy, and effectiveness. The results will inform our committee's funding decisions for the coming fiscal year. Hargrove stood nearby, his confident expression suggesting absolute faith in Prometheus's superiority. Walsh maintained her professional demeanor, though her eyes occasionally drifted to where Mercer and Thompson sat in the M1A3, waiting for the signal to begin. In the Prometheus Control Center, a separate bunker isolated from the main facility, Warren supervised the autonomous tank systems. Unlike the M1A3, which would be operated by its human crew throughout the demonstration, Prometheus would function primarily autonomously, with Warren and his team monitoring rather than controlling its actions. A signal flare arced into the morning sky, signaling the start of the first scenario, target acquisition and engagement. Below on the range, both vehicles began moving along parallel courses. Target drones appeared at various ranges and angles, some stationary, others moving. The objective was simple: identify, track, and engage as many valid targets as possible within the time limit. Prometheus performed exactly as Hargrove had promised. Its advanced sensor suite identified targets almost instantaneously, its weapon systems engaging with mechanical precision. One after another, targets were acquired and eliminated with ruthless efficiency. In the M1A3, Mercer and Thompson worked as a team, communicating constantly, prioritizing targets based on threat assessment rather than simply engaging in the order of detection. Their pace was slightly slower but methodical. When the first scenario ended, the results were displayed on large screens visible to all observers. Prometheus had engaged 27 targets in the allotted time. The M1A3 had managed 23. Hargrove allowed himself a satisfied smile as murmurs spread through the congressional observers. Round 1 had gone exactly as he predicted. The second scenario tested tactical mobility. Both vehicles navigated a complex obstacle course while maintaining targeting capability on moving drones. Here, the difference was less pronounced. Prometheus's algorithms handled the technical driving challenges perfectly, but the M1A3 crew used experience and tactical knowledge to anticipate optimal firing positions, sometimes taking slightly longer routes that provided better engagement angles. The final tally showed Prometheus completing the course 42 seconds faster, but the M1A3 achieving a slightly higher hit percentage on the moving targets. A draw, essentially. The congressional observers seemed impressed with both systems, which wasn't the decisive victory Hargrove had anticipated. Then came the third scenario, threat response in complex environments. The one that would test not just speed and accuracy, but judgment. The range transformed. Structures appeared, simulating an urban environment. Target drones representing both hostile forces and civilians populated the buildings and streets. The scenario briefing was intentionally vague, providing only essential information. Hostile forces had infiltrated the area, civilians were present, and the objective was to neutralize threats while minimizing collateral damage. What the briefing didn't specify, and what Hargrove had deliberately left ambiguous, were the exact criteria for threat identification. Which behavior patterns indicated hostile intent? Which weapons constituted primary threats? These judgment calls were precisely where human operators traditionally held an advantage over autonomous systems. As the scenario began, Prometheus moved with decisive purpose, its sensors sweeping the environment, its targeting algorithms processing the complex data stream. Warren watched from the control center, tension evident in his posture. This was the scenario he had most feared, the one where Prometheus's targeting limitations could be exposed. The M1A3 advanced more cautiously, Mercer directing Thompson to scan methodically, prioritizing situational awareness over rapid engagement. The first targets appeared. Some were obviously hostile, brandishing weapons and taking aggressive positions. Others occupied the gray area, armed but not actively threatening, positioned near civilians or partially obscured by environmental features. Prometheus engaged immediately, its main gun and coaxial machine gun eliminating the clearest threats with precision. But then it hesitated, its algorithms struggling to categorize several ambiguous targets. In the control center, Warren observed the targeting anomaly he had documented in previous tests. The system was prioritizing targets with visible, heavy weapons, even those showing no hostile intent, over actively threatening figures with smaller arms. In the M1A3, Mercer and Thompson were having a very different experience. "Target 2 o'clock, second floor window with RPG," Thompson called out, his voice steady. "Confirmed hostile," Mercer replied. "Engage." The tank's main gun roared, eliminating the threat. Multiple targets, ground level, intersection ahead. 4 individuals, small arms. Mercer studied the tactical display. "Hold fire, they're not threatening civilians. Monitor and proceed." This pattern continued, with Mercer making rapid judgment calls based on Thompson's observations. They engaged clear threats immediately but showed restraint with ambiguous targets, particularly those near civilians. Then came the critical moment. A drone simulating a technical vehicle appeared, mounted with what appeared to be a heavy machine gun, but showing no aggressive movement. Simultaneously, several drones simulating fighters with small arms began actively threatening a group of civilian drones. Prometheus's algorithms faced exactly the situation they struggled with most. The technical vehicle registered as the higher threat due to its weapon capability, despite its non-aggressive posture. The autonomous tank swiveled its gun toward the vehicle, ignoring the immediate threat to civilians. In the control center, Warren saw the targeting error developing. "Override targeting selection," he ordered. "Priority to active threats near civilians." His team scrambled to implement the manual correction, but valuable seconds were lost. By the time Prometheus redirected its attention to the actual threatening targets, the scenario had registered multiple simulated civilian casualties. In contrast, the M1A3 had immediately prioritized the active threat to civilians. Mercer directed Thompson to engage the small arms fighters first, leaving the technical vehicle under observation, but not immediate engagement. Their decision saved the simulated civilians and neutralized the actual threat. As the scenario concluded, the results appeared on the observation screens. Both systems had neutralized a similar number of hostile targets, but Prometheus had registered 7 simulated civilian casualties, compared to the M1A3's 2. More damning, the playback clearly showed Prometheus prioritizing the technical vehicle over the immediate threat to civilians, requiring human override to correct its targeting selection. The M1A3, guided by human judgment, had made the correct prioritization immediately. On the observation platform, the congressional staffers exchanged concerned glances. Hargrove's expression had turned to stone as he watched his carefully constructed demonstration crumble. Walsh maintained her professional demeanor, though a slight smile played at the corners of her mouth. The chairman stepped forward again. An impressive demonstration from both systems. Each has shown clear strengths and limitations. The committee will consider these results carefully in our funding deliberations. As the observers began to disperse, Hargrove cornered Warren away from the others. What happened? You assured me the targeting parameters were optimized. I told you repeatedly that the system struggles with threat prioritization in complex environments, Warren replied, standing his ground. The algorithms still favor weapon capability over demonstrated hostile intent, exactly as documented in our Nevada tests. Tests that were never meant to be made public, Hargrove hissed. This demonstration was engineered to showcase Prometheus's superiority. No, General. It was designed to honestly compare two different approaches to armored warfare. And today, human judgment proved its value. Hargrove's eyes narrowed. You knew this would happen. You wanted Prometheus to fail. I wanted the truth to be visible, Warren corrected. I've compromised my professional ethics enough under your leadership. I won't compromise the lives of soldiers who would depend on this system in actual combat. Before Hargrove could respond, Walsh approached with several committee members. Gentlemen, the observers have some technical questions about both systems. Would you join us? Hargrove had no choice but to comply, though his eyes promised later retribution for Warren's perceived betrayal. Across the range, Mercer and Thompson climbed down from the M1A3, greeted by Winters and Hendricks. Impressive performance, sir, Hendricks said, particularly in the third scenario. Prometheus performed exactly as Chen predicted, Mercer replied quietly. It prioritized perceived threat capability over demonstrated hostile action. The committee noticed, Winters confirmed. I overheard several staffers questioning whether an autonomous system can ever truly replace human judgment in complex combat environments. That's a start, Mercer acknowledged, but it doesn't solve our bigger problem. Thompson is still under investigation. TechWar's technology transfer to China remains unproven, and Hargrove still has significant influence. So what's our next move? Thompson asked. Mercer watched Hargrove across the range, noting how the general was already working to minimize the demonstration's impact with key committee members. Hargrove will adjust his strategy. Today was a setback, not a defeat. He'll find another way to advance Prometheus and undermine the M1A3. And discredit us in the process, Thompson added grimly. Exactly, which means we need to accelerate our investigation. Mercer turned to Winters. What's the latest on Lieutenant Colonel Foster? His communications show regular contact with TechWar executives, well beyond normal program coordination. And his brother-in-law at TechWar recently transferred to their Singapore operation. The operation with ties to Chinese defense contractors, Hendricks added. Follow that connection, Mercer ordered. I want everything on that transfer, timeline, responsibilities, communications. If Foster passed M1A3 data to his brother-in-law, and that data then moved to Singapore and potentially to Chinese interests, we'd have our smoking gun, Winters finished. In the meantime, I need to speak with Warren. His performance today suggests he might be ready to share his concerns about Prometheus more formally. As the group dispersed to their assignments, Mercer remained beside the M1A3, one hand resting on its armored hull. The tank had performed exactly as designed today, combining advanced technology with human judgment to outperform the autonomous alternative in the scenarios that mattered most. But the battle for the future of American armored warfare was far from over, and Mercer knew that Hargrove, like any committed adversary, would be most dangerous when cornered. The real fight was just beginning. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Aberdeen Proving Ground as Mercer waited outside the Technical Evaluation Center. The comparative demonstration had concluded hours earlier, but its implications continued to reverberate through the gathered military and congressional observers. For the first time, Prometheus's weaknesses had been publicly exposed, challenging Hargrove's carefully crafted narrative of autonomous superiority. Dr. Elliot Warren emerged from the building alone, his shoulders hunched against an invisible weight. At 50, Warren looked a decade older, the strain of recent events etched into the lines of his face. He spotted Mercer and hesitated briefly before changing direction to approach him. Colonel Mercer, impressive performance today. Your system performed exactly as designed, Doctor, Mercer replied carefully. Both systems did. Warren's eyes narrowed at the deliberate emphasis. You knew about Prometheus's targeting limitations, the prioritization errors in complex environments. I had information suggesting certain anomalies. Your reaction during the third scenario confirmed them. My reaction? You were ready with the manual override, almost as if you anticipated exactly when and how the system would fail. Warren glanced around to ensure they weren't overheard. Walk with me, Colonel. They moved away from the building toward the empty testing range, where the afternoon breeze carried their words away from potential listeners. I've been documenting Prometheus's targeting anomalies for 18 months, Warren admitted once they were safely isolated. The system consistently prioritizes weapon capability over demonstrated hostile intent in multi-target scenarios, a flaw in the fundamental algorithm that Hargrove refuses to acknowledge. Why protect him? Why not report these flaws through official channels? Warren laughed bitterly. Prometheus is Hargrove's legacy project, his vision for the future of warfare. Anyone who questions it finds themselves reassigned or retired. I've seen 6 engineers removed from the program for raising legitimate technical concerns. So you stayed silent. I documented everything, built a comprehensive record of test failures, algorithm limitations, and Hargrove's systematic efforts to conceal them. Warren paused. I'm a scientist, Colonel. I believe in Prometheus's potential, but not at the cost of soldiers' lives if the system fails in combat. Those records could prove crucial, Doctor, not just for the future of Prometheus, but for an ongoing investigation into potential security breaches. You mean the M1A3 leak? Warren nodded thoughtfully. I wondered if there might be a connection. Hargrove has been fixated on eliminating the M1A3 as competition. He views it as the primary obstacle to Prometheus's adoption. Fixated enough to orchestrate a security breach? Warren hesitated, weighing his words carefully. I can't speak to that directly, but I can tell you that Hargrove has maintained unusually close relationships with tech war executives throughout Prometheus's development, relationships that go beyond normal contractor interactions. What kind of relationships? Private meetings without technical staff present, secure communications outside official channels, and a particular interest in tech war's international operations, especially in Singapore. Each word confirmed Mercer's suspicions. The connections between Hargrove, tech war, and potentially Chinese defense interests were real, not merely theoretical. I need your help, Doctor. Your documentation of Prometheus's flaws, combined with evidence we're gathering about tech war's technology transfers abroad, could expose a serious threat to national security. Warren stared out across the empty testing range, his expression troubled. Do you understand what you're asking, Colonel? 30 years in defense research? Gone, my reputation destroyed. Hargrove and his allies would ensure I never work again. I'm asking you to protect American soldiers and preserve our military superiority, the same goals that led you to document those flaws in the first place. A long silence followed as Warren visibly wrestled with his conscience. Finally, he reached into his jacket pocket and removed a small data drive. This contains everything: test records, video documentation, internal communications, my personal insurance policy. He held it out. Once you have this, I can't protect you. Hargrove will know it came from me. Mercer took the drive, recognizing its value and the courage it took to share it. We can offer you protection. Walsh has considerable influence. No protection necessary. Warren's smile was resigned. After today's demonstration, I'll be submitting my formal resignation from the Prometheus program, returning to academic research where ethical concerns aren't considered career suicide. Hargrove won't let you walk away that easily, not with what you know. Perhaps not, but he is a pragmatist at heart. Discrediting me now only raises more questions about Prometheus. Better to let the troublesome scientists fade quietly away. As if summoned by their conversation, a voice called from behind them. Dr. Warren, the congressional delegation is requesting additional technical details about Prometheus's performance. One of Warren's assistants approached rapidly, looking anxious. General Hargrove sent me to find you urgently. Warren nodded to the young engineer. I'll be right there. He turned back to Mercer, speaking quickly. The password is Oppenheimer 1945. Review everything before you act. There are larger issues at stake than just Prometheus or the M1A3. With that cryptic warning, Warren departed, walking back toward the future he had just deliberately sacrificed. Mercer watched him go, the small data drive heavy in his pocket. Within it might lie not just the vindication of Michael Thompson, but evidence of a threat to American military security that extended far beyond inter-service rivalries or budget battles. The question now was how to use that information without exposing Warren as the source, and how to do it before Hargrove realized what they had obtained. Night had fallen by the time Mercer reconnected with his team at their temporary headquarters at Aberdeen. Winters and Hendricks had established a secure operations center in a rarely used maintenance building, safely isolated from the main facilities where Hargrove might have allies monitoring their activities. "Sir," Hendricks greeted him as he entered, "we've been reviewing the data from the demonstration. The performance discrepancy in Scenario 3 is even more significant than it appeared on site." Prometheus consistently prioritized potential threats over active ones, Winters added. "A fundamental flaw in its threat assessment algorithm, exactly what we suspected. We now have confirmation of that flaw, plus comprehensive documentation of similar failures in previous tests." Mercer produced Warren's data drive. This contains Dr. Warren's personal records of Prometheus testing, including instances where Hargrove deliberately concealed poor performance. Winters took the drive, her expression cautious. How reliable is Warren? Could this be misinformation? He's risking everything by providing this. His career, possibly more. Mercer's tone conveyed his assessment of Warren's credibility. And it aligns with what we observed today. Prometheus has critical flaws that make it dangerous in actual combat scenarios. So Hargrove is pushing an unready system to replace the M1A3, Hendricks summarized. Serious, but not necessarily criminal. Wouldn't be the first time the Pentagon adopted a flawed weapons platform due to political pressure. "This goes beyond normal acquisition politics," Mercer replied. Warren mentioned unusually close relationships between Hargrove and tech war executives. Private meetings, secure communications outside normal channels, and specific interest in tech war's Singapore operations. The same Singapore subsidiary connected to Chinese defense contractors, Winters noted. The implications clear. If Hargrove is facilitating technology transfer to China through tech war, while simultaneously sabotaging the M1A3 program to ensure Prometheus becomes America's primary battle tank, Hendricks continued, then we're facing a sophisticated operation to compromise America's armored capabilities on multiple fronts, Mercer finished. Exactly what Chen suggested. Thompson, who had been reviewing technical data on a separate terminal, looked up. "Where is Captain Thompson now?" "Back in restricted quarters at Quantico. Walsh couldn't maintain his temporary release beyond the demonstration." Mercer checked his watch. "We have limited time. Hargrove will be doing damage control after today's performance, but once he realizes Warren may have shared documentation, we need to move quickly," Winters agreed. "I suggest we divide our focus. I'll analyze Warren's documentation, verifying its authenticity, and identifying the most significant evidence of Prometheus flaws. I'll continue tracking Foster's communications with his brother-in-law at Tech War," Hendricks added, "and any connections to the Singapore operation." "Good. I'll coordinate with Walsh and prepare a comprehensive briefing." Mercer's expression hardened. "We need irrefutable evidence linking Hargrove directly to the M1A3 leak. Without that, he can claim the Prometheus flaws are simply development challenges, unrelated to Thompson's case." As the team dispersed to their tasks, Mercer stepped outside to call Walsh on a secure line. The night air was cool, carrying the distant sounds of Aberdeen's ongoing operations. Somewhere in the darkness, Prometheus sat silently in its maintenance bay, an embodiment of technological promise and fundamental flaws. Like any weapon, its true nature depended on the intentions of those who wielded it. Walsh answered on the second ring. "I've been expecting your call, Jack." The demonstration created quite a stir among the congressional observers. "That was the intention, ma'am, but it's only the beginning. We've acquired documentation of Prometheus test failures that Hargrove deliberately concealed, and potential connections between Hargrove and Tech War's international operations." A long pause followed. "How solid is this evidence?" "Very solid, ma'am, direct from Prometheus's chief designer." "Warren?" Walsh's voice revealed no surprise. "I suspected he might have reservations. His academic background made him an unusual choice for Hargrove's team. He's provided comprehensive records, ma'am. But there's more." Warren confirmed unusual relationships between Hargrove and Tech War executives, particularly regarding their Singapore operations. "The same operations with connections to Chinese defense interests," Walsh finished. This is explosive, Jack. If proven, it goes well beyond professional misconduct or budget manipulation. It's treasonous. Yes, ma'am, but we still lack the direct connection to the M1A3 leak and Thompson's framing. Without that, Hargrove can claim these are separate issues. What do you need? Time and resources, ma'am. My team is analyzing Warren's data now. We're also tracking communications between Lieutenant Colonel Foster and Tech War personnel, looking for evidence of deliberate information transfer. You'll have what you need, Walsh promised. I've already spoken with the Secretary about today's demonstration. He's concerned enough to delay any final decisions on the M1A3 versus Prometheus funding. Hargrove won't accept that delay without fighting back, ma'am. I know. Be careful, Jack. If Hargrove suspects you have Warren's documentation, he'll move aggressively to discredit you and seize the evidence. Understood, ma'am. We're operating under strict security protocols. As Mercer ended the call, he noticed a figure approaching through the darkness. His hand moved instinctively toward a sidearm he wasn't carrying before he recognized Samuel Chen's distinctive gait. You're developing a habit of appearing unexpectedly, Mr. Chen, Mercer observed as the intelligence officer approached. Occupational necessity, Colonel. Chen glanced around, ensuring they were alone. I understand Dr. Warren provided you with certain documentation regarding Prometheus. Mercer kept his expression neutral. News travels fast. In my line of work, information is the only currency that matters. Chen produced a small envelope. Warren wasn't the only one documenting concerns. These are file references for Tech War communications intercepted by NSA over the past 6 months. Communications between their domestic operations and the Singapore subsidiary. I assume these intercepts show technological data being transferred? Not explicitly. They're too careful for that. But they show patterns consistent with systematic technology transfer protocols. Code words, fragmented technical discussions, personnel movements between operations. Enough to raise concerns, not enough to prove criminal intent, Mercer summarized. Exactly. But combined with Warren's documentation and whatever your team has discovered about Foster's communications with his brother-in-law, we might have enough to force a formal investigation. Mercer took the envelope. Why help us, Chen? What's your stake in this? Chen's expression remained professionally neutral. Let's just say that some of us in the intelligence community have concerns about developing autonomous weapons systems using algorithms that may have been compromised at their source. You think Tech War's AI technology is vulnerable? I think any technology developed by a company with extensive ties to Chinese defense contractors deserves extreme scrutiny before we make it the backbone of American armored forces. The implication was clear and disturbing. Not just technology transfer to China, but potentially compromised technology being integrated into American defense systems. A Trojan horse at the heart of Prometheus. We'll add this to our investigation, Mercer said, but we need to move quickly. After today's demonstration, Hargrove will be accelerating his countermoves. Indeed, and Colonel, Chen's voice took on added gravity. Watch Captain Thompson's situation closely. My sources indicate Hargrove is preparing additional evidence against him. Fabricated communications with Chinese intelligence are to be discovered in the next 24 hours. They're tightening the noose, Mercer said grimly, making sure Thompson can't defend himself effectively when the final accusations drop. Precisely. Whatever you're going to do it soon. With that warning, Chen melted back into the darkness, leaving Mercer alone with the growing weight of their investigation. Time was running out. Not just for Michael Thompson, but potentially for the future of American armored warfare itself. In the makeshift operations center, Winters had transformed one wall into a digital evidence board, mapping connections between key players in their investigation. Hargrove's stern face anchored one corner, connected by red lines to Tech War executives, Lieutenant Colonel Foster, and several congressional allies who consistently supported Prometheus funding. Warren's documentation is comprehensive and damning, she reported as Mercer studied the display. 18 months of test records showing consistent targeting failures in complex environments, prioritization errors that could prove catastrophic in actual combat, and most significantly, Hargrove's direct orders to classify these failures as calibration issues rather than fundamental flaws. Criminal negligence at minimum, Hendricks added from his workstation, deliberately concealing performance issues that could endanger soldiers in combat, but still not directly connected to the M1A3 leak or Thompson's framing, Mercer noted. What about Foster? Hendricks brought up a series of communications records on the main screen. Foster has been in regular contact with his brother-in-law at Tech War, Douglas Reed, Mostly personal communications, nothing explicitly suspicious. But 3 months ago, Reed transferred to TechWar's Singapore operation. Since then, their communications have been less frequent, but contain subtle references to the package and delivery confirmations. Code words for information transfer, Winters interpreted. Classic espionage terminology. Exactly. And the timing aligns perfectly with the enhanced deception operation that Thompson was ordered to execute, the one with Walsh's falsified authorization. Mercer processed this information. So Foster receives classified M1A3 data through his position, passes it to Reed, who transfers to Singapore where he can more easily share it with Chinese partners. Meanwhile, Thompson is manipulated into releasing modified versions of that same data, creating a perfect scapegoat when the leak is discovered. A sophisticated operation with multiple layers of deniability, Winters agreed. But we still lack the smoking gun linking Hargrove directly to these activities. Mercer produced Chen's envelope. These might help. NSA intercepts of communications between TechWar domestic and Singapore operations. Not explicitly incriminating, but showing patterns consistent with technology transfer protocols. As Winters began integrating this new information into their investigation, Mercer's secure phone vibrated with an incoming message. It was from Walsh, brief but urgent. Thompson's situation critical. New evidence being presented to JAG tomorrow. Need conclusive counter-evidence immediately. They're moving against Thompson, Mercer announced, preparing to file formal espionage charges based on new evidence they've manufactured. Sir, Hendricks called from his workstation, I think I found something. He brought up an encrypted email chain on the main screen. This was in the NSA intercepts Chen provided. Communications between a senior TechWar executive and their Singapore operation, discussing a special project involving modified parameters and strategic disclosure. The leak, Winters interpreted, but that still doesn't connect to Hargrove or prove Thompson's innocence. Keep reading, Hendricks urged. The response references confirmation from our 3-star friend and proceeding as authorized. 3 stars. Hargrove's rank. Circumstantial, Mercer cautioned. It could reference another lieutenant general. Except for this, Hendricks highlighted a subsequent message in the chain. Quote, ensure Thompson receives the expanded parameters through the usual channel. His modifications will provide perfect cover when disclosure occurs. The operations center fell silent as the implications sank in. Here was direct evidence not only of TechWar's involvement in the leak, but specific mention of Thompson being manipulated as part of the plan. This is it, Mercer said quietly. The connection we needed. TechWar orchestrated the leak with Hargrove's knowledge and authorization. They deliberately used Thompson as an unwitting participant, knowing his modifications to the leaked data would make him the perfect scapegoat. We need to get this to Walsh immediately, Winters urged, before they move against Thompson with their fabricated evidence. Not yet, Mercer cautioned. This is powerful, but still not conclusive by legal standards. We need the final piece connecting Hargrove directly to the authorization of false orders in Walsh's name. Sir, with respect, we may not have time to find that perfect evidence, Hendricks argued. Thompson could be formally charged within hours. Mercer understood the urgency, but also recognized the danger of moving too soon with incomplete evidence. Hargrove was too well connected, too protected. Anything less than irrefutable proof would be quickly dismissed, leaving them exposed and discredited. We have until morning, he decided. Focus all efforts on finding communications between Hargrove and Foster regarding the falsified orders. That's our missing link. As his team returned to their investigation with renewed urgency, Mercer stepped away to contact Michael Thompson on a secure line. The young officer needed to know that vindication might be close, but also that the most dangerous hours still lay ahead. Captain, it's Mercer. How are you holding up? Maintaining, sir. Thompson's voice was steady despite his situation. My guards were doubled this evening. Something's happening. They're preparing to file formal charges, fabricated communications with Chinese intelligence, according to my source. A brief silence. So they're done setting the stage, moving to the final act. We're close to breaking this open, Michael. We have evidence linking TechWar to the leak and specific mention of you being manipulated as part of their plan. But not Hargrove directly? Not yet. We're working on that final connection now. Thompson's voice lowered. Sir, if you don't find it in time, I want you to know I don't regret anything. When I discovered the unauthorized expansion of the deception operation, I could have stayed silent, followed orders without question. But that's not what my father would have done, not what you taught me to do. Mercer felt a surge of pride mixed with determination. Your father faced impossible odds in Baghdad, held his position when others would have retreated. That same courage runs in your blood, son. Thank you, sir. Whatever happens tomorrow. Nothing's happening tomorrow except your exoneration, Captain. That's a promise. As Mercer ended the call, he stared out into the darkness beyond the operations center. Somewhere out there, powerful forces were aligning against them. Hargrove with his Pentagon connections, Tech War with his corporate resources, perhaps even Chinese intelligence, working to protect their technological pipeline. Against these forces stood Mercer's small team, armed with partial evidence and dwindling time. The odds were long, but Mercer had faced worse in the burning oil fields of Kuwait and the narrow streets of Baghdad. In those battles, American tanks had prevailed not just through technological superiority, but through the courage and determination of the men inside them. Some things never changed, regardless of how warfare evolved. The human element remained decisive, and Mercer had no intention of abandoning that principle now, when it mattered most. Morning arrived with cold clarity at Aberdeen. Mercer had remained in the operations center throughout the night, reviewing evidence and coordinating with Walsh as their investigation reached its critical phase. The entire team showed signs of exhaustion, running on coffee and determination as they pursued the elusive final connection between Hargrove and the falsified orders. "Sir," Winters called, her voice tight with urgency. "Just received word from Quantico. Military police entered Thompson's quarters 30 minutes ago. He's being transferred to the detention facility for formal charging." "Hargrove's moving faster than expected," Mercer observed grimly. Walsh, already informed. "She's attempting to delay the proceedings, but Hargrove has secured authorization directly from the Judge Advocate General's office. They're treating this as a high-priority national security case." Mercer checked his watch. If Thompson was formally charged with espionage, everything would change. The legal machinery of the military justice system would take over, making it nearly impossible to correct the record even with subsequently discovered evidence. "What's our status on Foster's communications?" Hendricks looked up from his terminal, fatigue evident in his eyes. "We've reviewed everything available. Multiple communications with Tech War executives, regular contact with his brother-in-law before and after the transfer to Singapore, but nothing explicitly connecting him to the falsified orders in Walsh's name." "There has to be something," Mercer insisted. "Foster couldn't have generated those orders without authorization, and Hargrove wouldn't communicate that authorization through normal channels." Winters straightened suddenly. Maybe he didn't communicate it at all. Meaning, what if Hargrove never explicitly ordered Foster to falsify Walsh's authorization? What if he used a cutout, someone who could convey the order without creating a direct electronic trail? The idea sparked something in Mercer's memory. Personal meetings. Warren mentioned Hargrove having unusual personal meetings with Tech War executives. Meetings without technical staff present. Exactly, no electronic record, no witnesses. But that still doesn't help us prove the connection, Hendricks pointed out. "If there's no record, there's always a record," Mercer countered. "Travel logs, calendar entries, security camera footage." He turned to Winters. "Does Foster maintain a personal calendar or journal?" "Unknown, but standard procedure for officers at his level would include a detailed appointment calendar." "Access it now." As Winters worked to locate and access Foster's calendar, Mercer received another update from Walsh. Thompson had arrived at the detention facility. The formal charging process had begun. They had perhaps an hour, maybe less, before the point of no return. "Got it," Winters announced. Foster's official calendar synchronized across his devices, standard military appointment tracking. The calendar appeared on the main screen, showing months of routine meetings, training sessions, and personal appointments. Nothing immediately incriminating. "Focus on the period just before Thompson received the expanded parameters for the deception operation," Mercer directed, approximately 3 months ago. Winters narrowed the display to the relevant time frame. Several routine program meetings, weekly updates with the M1A3 development team, regular secure communications with Walsh's office regarding the original deception operation. There, Hendricks pointed to an entry 3 days before Thompson received the expanded parameters. "Foster has a meeting listed only as PH consultation. No location, no participants." "PH?" Winters questioned. "Pentagon Hilton," Mercer explained. "Unofficial name for the DoubleTree in Crystal City, popular for off-the-record meetings with defense contractors. Close to the Pentagon, but not subject to its security protocols." Can we confirm if Hargrove was there the same day? Hendricks was already checking. Hargrove's public schedule shows him at the Pentagon that day, but there's a 4-hour block listed only as personal time in the afternoon. Check TechWar executive schedules if available. Winters accessed another database. TechWar CEO Richard Blackburn was in D.C. that day for government consultations. No specific locations listed. So Foster, Hargrove, and TechWar's CEO could have all been at the DoubleTree simultaneously, Mercer summarized. Still circumstantial, but it's a start. Wait, Hendricks called. Foster's calendar has another entry. 1 week later, implementation of PH directive, the same day Thompson received the expanded parameters. The connection was becoming clearer, but still not definitive. They needed something that explicitly linked the PH directive to the falsified orders in Walsh's name. Check Foster's expense reports, Mercer suggested. If he met with Hargrove and Blackburn off base, there might be a receipt, lunch, drinks, something. Drinks. Winters accessed the financial records. Nothing filed under official expenses, but his personal credit card shows a charge at the DoubleTree restaurant on that date, $342. An expensive meal for one person, Hendricks observed. Check if Foster filed for reimbursement through the M1A3 program budget, Mercer directed, following a hunch. Winters dug deeper into the financial records. No direct reimbursement request, but there is an interesting entry 2 days later. Foster requested a protocol fund disbursement for consultant engagement related to operational security enhancements, $350. He disguised a lunch meeting as a security consultation, Mercer concluded. Standard practice for off-the-books meetings that need to appear legitimate in financial records. Still doesn't prove what they discussed, Hendricks pointed out, or that it related to falsifying Walsh's orders. No, but this might. Winters had continued searching Foster's records. Foster maintains a secure personal notation system using military encryption, standard practice for officers handling classified information they need to reference later. She brought up a series of encrypted notes corresponding to the dates in question. The encryption is military grade. Breaking it would take resources we don't have, but the file names are visible. The screen showed several innocuously named files, except for one labeled Walsh Authorization Parameters Final. Creation date is 2 days after the DoubleTree meeting, Winters noted. Modification date is the day before Thompson received the expanded parameters. That's our smoking gun, Mercer said. Foster created a document containing Walsh's falsified authorization immediately after meeting with Hargrove and Blackburn, then modified it just before implementing it. But we can't access the actual document to prove its contents, Hendricks cautioned. We don't need to. The circumstantial evidence is overwhelming when combined with the TechWar communications explicitly mentioning Thompson being set up. Mercer turned to his team. Package everything, all of it. Warren's documentation of Prometheus flaws. The TechWar communications about using Thompson as cover. Foster's calendar and financial records showing the off-the-books meeting. The encrypted file with the telling file name. Send it all to Walsh immediately. As Winters compiled the evidence package, Mercer's phone rang. It was Walsh herself, her voice tight with urgency. Jack, Thompson is being formally charged as we speak. Hargrove is personally overseeing the process. We have the evidence, ma'am. Not perfect, but compelling when taken together. Winters is sending it now. Good. I'm with the Secretary of the Army. He's agreed to review it immediately, but Hargrove has considerable influence. This evidence needs to be irrefutable. Understood, ma'am. We've done everything possible with the time available. As the call ended, Mercer felt the familiar tension that preceded decisive action in combat. They had assembled their forces, positioned their assets, and were now committing to the attack. Whether those forces would prove sufficient remained to be seen. In war, as in investigations, timing was everything. They had launched their counterattack at the last possible moment. Now they could only wait to see if it would turn the tide. The Pentagon's E-ring, home to the military's highest leadership, hummed with tightly controlled tension. In a secure conference room, Major General Eleanor Walsh stood beside the Secretary of the Army as they reviewed the evidence Mercer's team had assembled. Across the table, Lieutenant General William Hargrove maintained a facade of professional composure despite the implicit accusations against him. These are serious allegations, Bill, the Secretary said, using the familiar address that highlighted the gravity of the situation. Evidence suggesting deliberate concealment of Prometheus performance flaws, potential technology transfer to Chinese interests through TechWar's Singapore operation, And most disturbing, the apparent framing of Captain Thompson for a leak that appears to have been orchestrated by Tech War with your knowledge. Fabrications and misinterpretations, Mr. Secretary, Hargrove replied smoothly. Colonel Mercer has assembled a collection of circumstantial connections and innocent coincidences, driven by his personal loyalty to Thompson and his outdated commitment to man-tank warfare. The evidence appears more substantial than that, General, the Secretary countered. De Warren's documentation of Prometheus flaws alone raises serious questions about your program's readiness for deployment. Development challenges that I've been transparent about in my classified briefings, sir. Challenges that will be resolved before full deployment. Yet you authorized a comparative demonstration yesterday without disclosing those known limitations. Hargrove shifted strategy. With respect, sir, this investigation has clearly exceeded its original mandate. Colonel Mercer was tasked with investigating the M1A3 security breach. Instead, he's launched a fishing expedition against a competing program driven by personal bias. Walsh stepped forward. Mr. Secretary, if I may, the investigation followed the evidence where it led. That evidence now strongly suggests that the M1A3 leak was deliberately orchestrated to undermine the program while advancing Prometheus as the only alternative. Captain Thompson appears to have been manipulated as an unwitting participant, then framed when the leak was discovered. Speculation, Hargrove dismissed. Meanwhile, we have concrete evidence of Thompson modifying classified documents that subsequently appeared on foreign intelligence monitoring sites. His financial records show suspicious deposits from Singapore accounts linked to Chinese defense interests. Deposits that appear to have been fabricated after the fact, Walsh countered, and the Tech War communications specifically mention using Thompson as cover for their activities. The Secretary reviewed the documents again, his expression grave. The political implications were enormous. Prometheus represented billions in defense contracts, congressional relationships, and America's strategic approach to future warfare. Undermining it based on incomplete evidence would create shockwaves throughout Washington. The charges against Captain Thompson have already been filed, Hargrove noted. The military justice system will determine his guilt or innocence based on the evidence. Evidence that may have been manufactured, Walsh insisted. Mr. Secretary, at minimum, I request a suspension of proceedings against Thompson pending a complete investigation of these counter-allegations. The Secretary remained silent for a long moment, weighing competing priorities and consequences. Finally, he looked up. General Hargrove, I'm temporarily suspending all Prometheus demonstration and acquisition activities pending a comprehensive review. Hargrove's composure cracked slightly. Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, this decision jeopardizes national security. The M1A3 program has been compromised. Prometheus represents our only viable path forward for next-generation armored warfare. Perhaps, but I cannot in good conscience proceed with either program until these allegations are thoroughly investigated. The Secretary turned to Walsh. Burn. General, I'm authorizing you to establish an independent review board with full access to both programs. Captain Thompson's case will be held in abeyance pending their findings. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, Walsh acknowledged. This is a mistake, sir, Hargrove said, his voice hardening. Delaying Prometheus development creates a critical capability gap that our adversaries will exploit. A greater mistake would be deploying a flawed system that endangers American soldiers, the Secretary replied firmly. Or worse, advancing a program that may have been compromised by foreign interests. The review proceeds, General. You're dismissed. As Hargrove departed, his rigid posture betraying his fury, Walsh remained with the Secretary. You've bought us time, sir, but Hargrove has powerful allies in Congress and the defense industry. They'll push back hard against any delay to Prometheus. I'm counting on your review board to work quickly, General. Assemble a team of unimpeachable credibility and ensure they have everything they need to reach definitive conclusions. Yes, sir. Colonel Mercer's team has laid the groundwork. With additional resources and authority, we can build on their investigation. The Secretary nodded thoughtfully. Mercer impressed me yesterday. His performance in the demonstration showed the value of experienced human judgment in complex combat environments. The kind of judgment no algorithm can fully replicate. That's been his argument all along, sir. Perhaps he's right. Technology advances, but certain human qualities remain irreplaceable. The Secretary gathered the evidence files. Keep me informed of your progress, General, particularly regarding Captain Thompson's situation. As Walsh departed the Pentagon, she called Mercer with the update. The initial battle had been won, but the war for the future of American armored warfare was far from over. Hargrove remained a formidable opponent with substantial resources and influence. The coming investigation would face resistance at every turn. But for now, they had achieved their immediate objective. Thompson's case was suspended. Both programs were under review, and the truth, however inconvenient for certain powerful interests, had a fighting chance to emerge. Aberdeen Proving Ground had returned to its normal rhythm of testing and evaluation. The temporary excitement of the comparative demonstration had faded, replaced by the methodical work of military research and development. But in a secure facility at the far edge of the base, a different kind of work continued with equal precision. Mercer stood before an evidence board that had grown exponentially over the past week. What had begun as an investigation into a security breach had expanded into a comprehensive examination of the relationship between Hargrove, Tech War Industries, and potentially compromised defense technologies. Foster has agreed to cooperate in exchange for immunity, Winters reported, entering with fresh documentation. His testimony confirms our theory. Hargrove personally directed him to falsify Walsh's authorization for the expanded deception operation, using Tech War as an intermediary to maintain deniability. And Thompson? Formal charges have been dropped. He's being fully reinstated with a commendation for his actions in bringing the unauthorized expansion to attention. Hendricks joined them, adding his update. Tech War is in crisis mode. Their stock has dropped 30% since the investigation became public. 3 senior executives have resigned, including CEO Blackburn. And their Singapore operation? Shuttered pending investigation by multiple agencies. NSA has prioritized analysis of all communications between their domestic and international branches. Early findings suggest systematic transfer of sensitive technologies to Chinese defense partners, disguised as civilian applications. Mercer absorbed this information with grim satisfaction. The conspiracy they had uncovered was being dismantled, piece by piece, its architects facing consequences for their actions. But the larger implications remain troubling. What about Prometheus itself, he asked. That's where it gets complicated, Winters replied. Warren's documentation proves the targeting system has critical flaws, but the underlying technology still has significant potential. The review board is recommending a fundamental restructuring of the program with enhanced oversight and more realistic development timelines. And the M1A3? Proceeding with full funding. Yesterday's appropriations vote was unanimous. The comparative demonstration made a powerful impression on the committee members. Mercer nodded, satisfied with this outcome. The M1A3 represented a balanced approach to armored warfare evolution, incorporating advanced technology while preserving the irreplaceable human element. It wasn't perfect, but it avoided the fundamental flaw of removing human judgment from life or death decisions on the battlefield. Sir, Hendricks said, there's one more development. General Hargrove has announced his retirement, effective immediately, citing personal reasons and desire to pursue private sector opportunities. A graceful exit arranged by his remaining allies, Mercer interpreted. Better than the court-martial he deserves, but at least he's removed from influence over defense acquisition. The Secretary is establishing new protocols for autonomous weapons development, Winters added. Explicit ethical guidelines, enhanced testing requirements for AI decision-making, and mandatory human oversight for all lethal systems. A start, Mercer acknowledged, but the fundamental question remains unanswered. How much control should we cede to machines in warfare? Where do we draw the line? Before either could respond, the facility door opened and Michael Thompson entered. The young captain had visibly recovered from his ordeal, his uniform immaculate, his bearing once again confident. Behind him followed Walsh, accompanied by a civilian Mercer didn't immediately recognize. Colonel, Thompson greeted him formally, reporting for debriefing as ordered. Mercer smiled, crossing the room to shake his hand. Good to see you, free and clear, Captain. Your father would be proud. Thank you, sir, for everything. Walsh stepped forward. Gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Dr. Alexander Reyes, newly appointed Director of the Advanced Combat Systems Integration Office. He'll be overseeing both the M1A3 program and the restructured Prometheus initiative. Reyes was in his early 60s, with the weathered appearance of a man who had spent time in the field rather than solely in laboratories. Colonel Mercer, a pleasure to meet you. Your performance in the comparative demonstration was most illuminating. Thank you, sir. Though I had excellent support. Mercer nodded toward Thompson and his team. Indeed, which is precisely why I'm here. Reyes gestured toward the evidence board. Your investigation uncovered not just corruption and potential espionage, but a fundamental philosophical question about the future of warfare. How do we balance technological advancement with the irreplaceable human element? A question I've been considering my entire career, sir. As have I, which is why I'd like to offer you a new assignment. Reyes produced official orders. Effective immediately, I'm establishing a joint human-machine integration team tasked with developing protocols for next-generation combat systems that preserve human judgment while leveraging artificial intelligence as a support tool rather than a replacement. Mercer took the orders, scanning them quickly. And you want me to lead this team, sir? You've demonstrated precisely the perspective we need. Someone who appreciates technology's potential while understanding its limitations. Someone who recognizes that the most effective combat systems will always be those that enhance human capabilities rather than eliminate them. Walsh nodded her approval. It's an opportunity to shape the future, Jack, to ensure that what happened with Prometheus doesn't repeat with the next generation of systems. Mercer considered the offer. For 30 years, he had served as a tank commander, leading men into battle from inside steel behemoths that represented America's armored might. Now he was being asked to help ensure that human judgment remained central to warfare's evolution, even as technology advanced exponentially. I'd like Captain Thompson assigned to the team, he stipulated, along with Lieutenant Colonel Winters and Mr. Hendricks. They've earned the right to help shape this future. Already arranged, Reyes confirmed, along with Dr. Warren, who's agreed to join as our technical lead. His experience with Prometheus's limitations makes him uniquely qualified to help design better systems. It was a new mission, but with the same fundamental purpose that had guided Mercer throughout his career: protecting American soldiers and preserving the combat effectiveness that kept them alive on the battlefield. I accept, sir. As the details were discussed, Mercer found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. What had begun as an investigation into a security breach had evolved into something far more significant: a battle for the soul of American warfare itself. The question of whether machines or men would dominate future battlefields remained partially unresolved, but they had established a crucial principle. Human judgment must remain the final arbiter of lethal force, regardless of technological advancement. Later that evening, Mercer found himself alone with Thompson at Aberdeen's Officers Club. Around them, younger officers discussed technical specifications and tactical theories. The eternal conversation of military professionals preparing for future conflicts. What happens now, sir? Thompson asked, nursing a bourbon that matched Mercer's own. Now we ensure that the lessons from Prometheus aren't forgotten, that the next generation of combat systems enhances human capabilities without replacing human judgment. Thompson nodded thoughtfully. My father used to say that the most dangerous weapon in any tank wasn't the main gun or the armor. It was the crew's collective experience and decision-making. Your father was right. Technology changes, tactics evolve, but certain fundamentals remain constant. Mercer raised his glass slightly. To Robert Thompson, the finest gunner I ever served with, and to his son, who carries on his legacy. As they drank the toast, Mercer gazed out the window toward the distant testing ranges where tomorrow's weapons would be evaluated. The future of warfare would continue to evolve, with artificial intelligence playing an increasingly significant role. But thanks to their efforts, that evolution would proceed with appropriate caution and respect for the human element that remained warfare's most essential component. In the final analysis, America's greatest military strength had never been its technology alone, impressive as that might be. It had always been the men and women who wielded that technology with courage, integrity, and judgment that no algorithm could replicate. As long as that truth remained recognized, the nation's security rested on a foundation far stronger than steel or silicon. The battle for the future would continue, but Mercer was confident they had secured a crucial victory: the recognition that in warfare, as in life itself, humanity must remain the master of the machines it creates, not their servant. It was a lesson written in the steel of countless tanks across decades of conflict, and one that would continue to guide America's warriors in the challenges yet to come. Steel endured. Truth prevailed. The human spirit, tested by fire, emerged stronger than before. That was the legacy not just of the Abrams, but of every American soldier who had ever answered the call to defend freedom, regardless of the weapons they carried or the era in which they served. A legacy that would continue as long as there were men and women willing to stand firm against those who threatened the values they held dear. Men like Mercer, like Thompson, like all those who understood that in the final analysis, victory depended not on technology alone, but on the indomitable human spirit that gave that technology purpose and direction. That was the steel truth that no adversary, foreign or domestic, could ever overcome.